the biggest question, I think, which is, yes, first of all, I think it's a possibility. But I really think that what's the biggest driving factor is fear of it being a possibility. And that was what allowed Al Gore to give in to George W. Bush in the first place in the Palm Beach, Florida vote counting thing, because he was afraid of having some kind of a civil war when these Karl Rove people were violently beating on the door. I think that Trump has just added so much to the world of divisiveness and fear and camps that even Nancy Pelosi said they'd have to have a really amazing case and have the Republicans join in if they were going to do any kind of impeachment, because it would divide the country. That's a statement based on fear. It's based on fear. And I think fear is related to a feeling of unconscious rage at feeling helpless against a parent or against somebody where you feel you have no way.
But might this not be a completely legitimate and real fear? I mean, you know, I feel fear if I'm standing in the street and I suddenly realize that there's a car bearing down on me. You know,
you better jump out of the way, but you don't shoot the driver.
Yeah, that's true. Unless he's been chasing me for blocks.
As fast as I can, but I'm not going to shoot the driver.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, I'm not carrying a gun, but second of all, if I were, I wasn't going to shoot the driver.
Yeah. But my point is Pelosi's fear legitimate?
Yes.
Real world legitimate?
I think even Gore's fear was legitimate. The question is, when are you going to face fears?
Right.
Or are you just going to keep running from them? I mean, this is what happened with Neville Chamberlain in Germany. It's just as much more slow motion in this country. So
you would suggest, are you suggesting that by not pushing for impeachment right now, in fact, actively discouraging impeachment, Nancy Pelosi's playing the role of Neville Chamberlain?
Yes.
That's strong lange. That's
yes. Well, I'm just saying yes, but
so
yes,
you're of the opinion. Yeah, are you of the opinion that on the record right now, Trump has already committed impeachable offenses?
As best I can tell, he has. Yes, and unbelievable things. Like, what would happen if any other president yesterday was going to be exposed as owning a massage parlor and giving special places for foreign political people. I mean, and making money off of it. I mean, who was going to?
Well, I remember the outrage in 2000 when Al Gore attended a fundraiser where there was either was put on by or there were some people there from Taiwan. And, you know, foreigners can't contribute to campaigns, and apparently they had. And it became this national scandal. Oh, my God, Al Gore's in the pocket of the Chinese.
No, what people have forgotten, and it's very essential to remember that this is, it taps into parts of our personality. I think we all have an inner Trump in some way or other, because we all have felt frustrated as children. We've all been wanting to just be able to make the rules and do what we wanted to do. I mean, everybody has some of that, and anger and hate and stuff. I mean, that's part of being human. But this is not normal. What's happened is not normal. And I think people can't remember that and don't think about that.
Yeah. There's been so much of it that it's starting to feel normalized. It's astonishing.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Dr. Justin Frank, his new book, Trump on the Couch, and previously Obama on the Couch and Bush on the Couch, a professor at Georgetown University, clinical professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Science. Dr. Frank, great talking with you as always. Thank you so much.
Good talking with you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls. Should Democrats be trying to impeach Trump right now, or should they be waiting? And welcome back. John in Vernon Hills, Illinois. Hey, John, thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV. What's on your mind?
Oh, Tom, I watch you every single day for the last 5 or 6 years.
Oh, my goodness. Well, thank you, John.
You had tweeted a question, is any Republican trustable?
Right.
My answer was, it is now the party of corrupt, greedy people.
I think you're right. Were you trying to spell out GOP, or you're just making the point that the Republican Party has become the home for the people who are corrupt and who are greedy, and that's the principal thing that animates them?
That's basically what it is. Actually, I have a name for them. I call them the Resugly Con.
Yeah.
They con the voters. The voters are idiots to listen to what they are saying because it's always a lie.
Yeah. I'm increasingly getting that. And then when people like Tucker Carlson are called out for, insanely racist and misogynist statements, he says, oh, yeah, I said some naughty words on the radio, big deal. And Fox just, moves along. I mean, it's insane. John, thank you for the call. Jesse in Miami. Hey, Jesse, thanks for watching Free Speech. Your thoughts?
Hi, Tom. Hey, the impeachment of Trump could be a distraction. It could be a solution. Miss Cortez, the lady from New York, she says capitalism is irredeemable. I think she's right. A lot of people think she's right, but don't have the courage she has to say it. So I would say, where did Trump come from? It comes from basically a capitalist system. Mm-hmm. And then how can we use media to, redeem capitalism? And media is pretty much sustained by capitalism. It's a rock and a hard place. So, but I would say if the Dems don't want to waste the time, what they would call, some people would call an impeaching Trump, impeach the system. They got a starting point with Ms. Cortez saying capitalism is irredeemable. Can somebody challenge her?
Well, the problem is that, we don't practice pure capitalism in this country, and we don't practice pure socialism in this country. And there's a huge gray area in between those two extremes. And that's the problem with this language, Jesse.
I agree. That's the thing. Action speaks louder than words. So we could use words and argue till the end of time. Yeah. But what we do is what counts. So if somebody could say something that don't work, it should be proof to it. If something does work, it should be proof to it. And then let...
Yeah, I think we've seen this. I mean, pre-Reagan, we had a form of capitalism here that had a healthy dose of socialism built into it, a strong social safety net, strong unions, things like that, and we had a growing middle class from the 1940s right through the mid-1980s. And then, Reagan imposed Reaganism, destroyed the unions, lowered the taxes on rich people, deregulated, companies. Dialed back basically the trim tabs on capitalism, dialed back the socialism that was regulating capitalism, and we ended up with a more capitalist society and a more brutal society as a result.
You know what time it is? It's time to take a closer look at a brand new birthstone. Let me roll my giant imaginary wheel of birthstones to see what gem we're going to explore this episode. Look, today is all about Aquamarine, the beautiful light blue gemstone that serves as Barch's birthstone. It's one of my all-time favorites, so let's get started. Aquamarine is one of the most popular and pretty members of the beryl family of gemstones. Another popular beryl is this green variety, emerald, but we'll talk more about May's birthstone some other time. Aquamarine is beryl's blue variety. Its name comes from two Latin roots, aqua and mare, and means water of the sea. The name pretty clearly coming from the blue color. There's a wide range of blues that can be found in aquamarine because that blue is dependent on iron. Color is dependent on iron in a lot of gemstones. Where iron is found within beryl's crystal structure will determine how deep the coloring is. That said, most aquamarines today have
Okay, it looks like Manafort is just going to go along and say, okay, you federal judges, just hit me with whatever you got. It's no problem, because I know I've got an a pardon coming. And the thing that should concern Manafort is if the state of New York starts looking into his crimes, which, to the best of my knowledge, they are not doing, at least in a high-profile way, because state charges cannot be subject to pardons from the president. He can't pardon state charges. Although right now Republicans are trying to change the law, and they've got a Supreme Court case going before the Supreme Court that would make it a whole lot easier. Well, actually, it would make it harder for a state court to prosecute somebody for something that the feds have looked into. They would call that double jeopardy. And they may actually have a case there, which means that the state of New York would have to prosecute him for something entirely different. But the question is Nancy Pelosi right when she says Trump is not worth impeachment right now? Now, you know, one side of the argument is that if you have impeachment hearings and let's say the House of Representatives does impeach Trump and then it goes to the Senate where he fails to get convicted, what's Trump going to do? He's not going to, like Bill Clinton kind of said, well, yeah, I never should have done that with Monica. I'm sorry. I apologize to my wife. You know, let's just move on. In fact, that was moveon.org, right? That's what came out of that, right? Bill Clinton saying, let's just move on. Trump's not going to do that. Trump's going to say, see, I just won in the Senate. I just owned the libs. I just defeated the Democratic Party. And his followers are going to go, yeah, we took them down. And do you get where I'm going with this? It's going to strengthen him. You know, if you take a shot at a mob boss and you don't take them out, metaphorically speaking, then, you know, if you're going to take an impeachment shot against Trump and you don't take him out of office, then you have just given him more power. And I believe that's the equation that Nancy Pelosi is looking at. On the other hand, if the House were to begin impeachment proceedings, they would have the power of subpoena, and they would have this wide open field of inquiry to open a whole variety of criminal activities that Donald Trump and his crime family have been involved with over the years. And that may be enough to convince Republicans in the Senate that it's time to abandon Trump and embrace President Pence. And Mike Pence is such a weasel and such a weird character, you know, calling his wife mother and not refusing to have dinner with women who are not his wife and blah-de-blah-de-blah. I mean, just all the whole weird Handmaid's Tale stuff that surrounds Mike Pence. Not to mention his, you know, in 2000 writing that tobacco doesn't cause cancer while he's taking money from the tobacco industry. I don't see how he gets reelected or Pence gets elected in 2020. So, you know, it's possible that the impeachment hearings could flip some Republicans. But look at what happened. I mean, we saw Jeff Flake and we saw Bob Corker stand up to Trump, and what happened? They got taken out of the Republican Party. They got weeded out of the gene pool, as it were. The Trump Party, the Republican Party now has become the Trump Party. And so is it even possible to convince Republicans in the Senate? Because it takes 2/3 of the Senate. It's going to take 67 senators to send Trump out of the White House. Is that even possible?
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
What do you think? Do you think that the Democrats should begin impeaching Trump, or do you think Nancy Pelosi's right? Let's wait until there's, quote, solid evidence. Or is it already there? Well, it's Tuesday, only 4 days, Tuesday through Friday, more to go in the Free Speech TV Fund Drive. So, you know, reaching back in memory to the National Lampoon and their cover with the dog and the gun, you'll recall. Make your donation now or I'm going to shoot the bear, the Bernie bear. Remember when we gave these away years ago? Anyway, I say that only half in jest, because if you want to see a Democrat as president, we have to have a Democratic or a progressive media landscape. In fact, if you want to see a progressive as president, we have to have a progressive media landscape. And that is not CNN and MSNBC. That is Free Speech TV. It's right. It's not even NPR or PBS. None of those organizations are progressive. And most of them, in fact, kind of minimize and poo-poo progressive ideas and progressive plans and things like that. Here on Free Speech TV, you've got serious progressive programming, real progressive programming. And if we don't hit our fund drive goals, we're essentially shooting that, right? We're taking a bite out of it. We're hurting that. In fact, you know, our failure to hit our goal in the last time around, and I think the time before that too, have, I believe, slowed down the ability of free speech to roll out new programs. It concerns me tremendously that, you know, every single one of our fund drives, we seem to be raising less and less. So, I mean, we're way behind on this one. We're like 30% behind. So we need your help, and we need your help now. Please call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution. There are some premiums. There's the Jesus Was a Socialist bumper sticker. There's with the $20 gift, with a $60 gift. There's the Free Speech TV six-sticker design pack. With a $72 gift, you get a copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. Heads up, that's not going to be released until June, so, hopefully we can ship them in May, but we'll see. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie. With a $360 gift, you get everything, the Jesus Was a Socialist pin, the sticker pack, the Hidden History of the Second Amendment, the t-shirt, and the hoodie. With a $500 gift, you can attend this webinar that Louise and I are putting together on resolving fear, anxiety, and stress in these troubled times, and how, in fact, in some ways, to even use those things as a positive force in your life. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out with us for the last hour of the show, and then we'll go grab some lunch. So those are the goodies that we're offering, and the premiums. But the bottom line is that you hear news on Free Speech TV, you hear stories and you see stories on Free Speech TV. You get a feel for how things are in the world on Free Speech TV, and not just my program, but all the great programming on this network. That for a long, long time, this network was just Amy Goodman, and and then they started carrying my show. We had a little webinar camera sitting in our studio more than a decade ago, and we just streamed the show live, and it caught an audience. People were like, "Hey, that's kind of cool." And then Free Speech TV expanded out from that and put Stephanie on, and then they started adding other programs, and now we've got a real live TV network really rolling along here. And we're very proud to have been there essentially at the beginning, or at least at the beginning of this modern reincarnation of moving from a network that was just playing Amy's show and documentaries to a network that's actually got live programming much of the day, and interactive programming in many cases. We're very pleased and proud to have played a role in that, and to have been kind of proof of concept for that, for the network. And now we need your help to keep it going. It's just that simple. That's what it boils down to. We need your help to keep it going. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. We would like to grow the network, but right now I'm more concerned with just keeping it on the air and keeping this show on this network. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. If you want to participate, if you want to help out, if you feel that you're getting value from Free Speech TV. Somebody on Twitter yesterday said, I'm giving up oil changes to be able to send that $45 to Free Speech TV. I almost responded saying, don't give up your oil changes. I mean, there are limits, right? You don't want to ruin your car. On the other hand, for 2 decades now, I've always used synthetic oil in my car, so it only needs to change the oil every 20, 30,000 miles, although, you still do it more frequently than that. But and also the synthetic oils are, apparently less hard on the environment. But in any case, that was sweet, right? That was a really sweet sentiment that, this is what I'm willing to give up. Maybe give up going out for dinner one night a month, or give up that Starbucks, one day a week, or whatever it may be that to help keep this network on the air. But please now call 877-378-8669. Please.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Amazing. Donald Trump live tweeting Fox News, and as Fox News lies and says that the founder of Greenpeace says climate change is a scam. This guy, his name is Moore, Patrick Moore. He's not the founder of Greenpeace. He was one of thousands of people who joined Greenpeace in its first year and then within a year went off to start his own little think tank where he consults with oil companies and gas companies and you know, helps them deny climate change. I mean, he's got Greenpeace came out and said, you know, Moore is not a co-founder. He does not represent Greenpeace. He's a paid lobbyist, not an independent source. But, you know, Tucker Carlson says he's the founder of Greenpeace, and so Donald Trump tweets it. It's insane. I mean, even his lies are second-generation lies in many cases. It's just mind-boggling. Billy in Wimberley, Texas. Hey, Billy, what's on your mind today?
Well, Tom, listen, I generally don't have a problem with progressives or liberals, but when you make an asinine statement like Trump is calling out a hit on somebody, that's just silly. And it's why y'all are failing out there.
So you don't think that telling the prison population out there, particularly when the white gangs in prison are pretty much controlled by the Nazi gangs, the skinhead gangs, and I mean they become more powerful than the old mafia gangs in prison, but they and the mafia gangs. No. I mean, the main phrase is rat. They know that rats get killed. Whitey Bulger, once it was revealed he worked for the FBI, he was dead in a week, you know, this old mobster. So you don't think that Donald Trump tweeting out that Michael Cohen is a rat before he goes to prison is a shout-out to those people that they should kill him? You don't think that's true?
I think it's a lie, Tom, and I think you're doing it on purpose.
Well, I read his tweet. You didn't see his tweet where he called Michael Cohen a rat?
But you're assuming that's what he meant, and you can't do that. That's why you people are failing. That's why you've got to beg for donations, because nobody's going to listen to this.
What?
I haven't heard you in months.
Okay. But Billy, I'm not going to go with the ad hominems. That's pretty pathetic. Well, I guess that's an ad hominem. I'm not going to go there. Try an argument sometime, Billy. You know, it works better. Holly in Marshall, Missouri. Hey, Holly, what's on your mind today?
That guy made me laugh because when they have no facts, they make it personal.
Yeah.
But I wanted to just say that I think that Speaker Pelosi is doing this strategically, basically because, as I heard yesterday when you were speaking with Ro Khanna, there's so many things that people want done, and I think they don't want to spend that much time and energy when they see all of these lawsuits coming and these indictments coming down. Even Scotland is suing him for building a wall around his golf course there.
Right.
I mean, so I do think it's strategic, and I think it's wise, but then you say things that make me think twice, so I guess I'll have to wait.
Yeah, I'm very conflicted about it. I have extraordinary respect for Nancy Pelosi, for both as a person, but most importantly as a legislator. She and as a leader, she understands this. She has been doing this for most of her adult life. She knows what's going on. She knows how to count votes. And I think she shares my concern that if Donald Trump is not convicted in the Senate, it's going to double his power. It's going to significantly increase his power because, as I said before, Bill Clinton, even after he was not convicted in the Senate, was still penitent. What's the word? Penitent? Repent? He was still saying, "I'm sorry," right? And apologizing. I mean, he's been doing this ever since, literally. He didn't come out and beat his chest and say, "See, I beat those Republicans in the Senate. I'm Bill Clinton." No, he didn't do that. But Donald Trump will do that if he wins in the Senate, if he fails to be impeached in the Senate or removed from office in the Senate, which at this moment is a certainty. And that, I think, would be giving him even more power would be the worst thing we could do. On the other hand, it's possible that an impeachment hearing would convince some Republican senators, but I'm not seeing evidence of that so far. It looks to me like they are just as without shame as Trump himself is. There might be 2 or 3 who have some conscience left, but I think the last 2 were Jeff Flake and Bob Corker, and they're gone. Holly, thank you for your thoughts and your perspective on that. Dave in Ocean View, Hawaii. Hey, Dave, what's up?
Hey, how are you today, Tom?
I am great, but I'll get better, Dave. I hope the same is true for you.
Well, I'm pretty well, but you were talking about cleaning up the White House, let's say.
All right.
Don't you think it's probably time that there's a physical revolution? People need to take to the
No, physical revolutions cause people to die. I'm not willing to go there, Dave.
Well, it's been so long. I'm a born and bred Iowan. Iowa. Everything happens there. You can't get anything done today. Nothing. Everybody lies to you. Every single side. It's time we take back what we deserve.
Yeah, and Bernie has been for years calling for a political revolution, and I'm all in favor of a political revolution. But an actual physical revolution where people take up arms against each other? No way. Not even going to consider it. Patricia in Vashon, Washington. Hey, Patricia, what's up?
Hey, it's good to talk with you again. I'm kind of nervous, so it might be a little weird. But anyway, you know, I was thinking that if we could get a group of international lawyers to bring international charges against the administration, the whole administration, and go to The Hague or have something outside of The Hague like they did with Monsanto, that at that point, if he is indicted and found guilty and everything, that at that point, couldn't they then tell Trump and the administration what they could do and what they couldn't do, and wouldn't that remove his power and the power that they have over people and what they've done at the border, and
sure.
All of that stuff is illegal. I mean, there's several kind of illegal international things that he's done, and the border, I think, is the most atrocious.
Right, and participating with Saudi Arabia in the bombing of Yemen, and you know, there's war crimes, there's domestic crimes. The problem is the United States withdrew, and I think this happened during the Bush Jr. administration, but I might be wrong. The United States withdrew from the International Criminal, whatever it's called, and so our leaders are no longer subject to oversight or prosecution at The Hague. So they could do that. They have no enforcement mechanism, to the best of my knowledge, at all anymore. But on the other hand, you know, if it was done with really high visibility in a foreign venue, that might be the equivalent of the impeachment hearings here if the media picked it up, if it got that kind of publicity. But, you know, again, that's something that's problematic. So I think that's a real long shot, Patricia. I would love to see something like that happen. But, you know, we saw this 3 different times. George W. Bush was sued, although before the U.S. Supreme Court, but also there was an attempt to sue him in criminal court. This was all being done by Michael Ratner, Alan Ratner's brother, who passed away a year or two ago from brain cancer. And but when he was running the Center for Constitutional Rights, the CCR, and they were actually successful in the Supreme Court 3 times. The Hamdan case is the most famous, you know, in representing people who had been in Gitmo and who had been in that god-awful prison in Iraq. And you know, what it came down to was that the Hague, the people at The Hague had no power over Bush. So it's a tough one. Patricia, interesting idea. Very interesting idea. Thank you for the call. Richard in Humble, Texas, watching us on Facebook Live. Hey, Richard, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom. Thanks. I've been watching you ever since Al Jazeera was on the air.
Thank you.
I wanted to point out that, you know, I think Nancy Pelosi's strategy right now is correct due to what you've already mentioned about the history with Bill Clinton and nothing getting done in the Senate. But I've been on the ground here, like on the Emancipation Avenue at Southwest Key, where they're now housing 16 and 17-year-olds. We protested there because they had planned to put actual babies there. Mm-hmm. And all my so-called conservative Trump friends or acquaintances, they'll come on my Facebook page and say they shouldn't have come here in the first place. And that's flat out, that's all they say. And do you think that Trump instigates and keeps, I don't know what the word is, it continues the lack of what moral fiber we try to adhere to, as far as, okay, so now they're holding 16 and 17-year-olds there, and so now it's okay. It's not okay. And how can we, like, get into the conscience of the conservative mind?
You know, conservatives used to be the ones who proclaimed that they were the ones with a conscience. In fact, the title of Barry Goldwater's first autobiography was The Conscience of a Conservative. That was, you know, the claim to morality, the claim to the high moral ground, the claim to moral outrage, all those things. Those were the realm of the conservatives in the 60s, 70s, 80s. They were pushing back against the sexual revolution. They thought it was immoral. They were pushing back against drug use among young people, the hippies. They thought that was immoral. They were pushing back against homosexuality. They thought it was immoral. You know, abortion, they framed it morally. I mean, this, you know, obviously some of these positions, you know, even America no longer agrees with them on, broadly speaking. But the bottom line is that traditionally, whether it was real morality or phony morality or bigoted morality, the conservatives were always the, quote, party of morality. And I haven't heard any language of that kind in a long time. And you see Pat Robertson and, you know, Jerry Falwell and his pool boy, you know, on TV and in writing and whatnot, talking about how wonderful Donald Trump is and all this. And you just have to assume that whole claim to righteousness that has been held by these people who called themselves conservatives and called themselves Christians is just gone. And yeah, I think, and so the question is, you know, and I think you're saying, you know, Pelosi's being smart right now by holding off on impeaching Trump until at least the Republicans are willing to say, yes, this guy has to go. And, you know, I'm inclined to agree with that.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
But I can make a strong argument on the other side that the hearings themselves, much like the Watergate hearings, I mean, that's where the subpoena came for the Watergate tapes, which is what took down Nixon. And welcome back. Mary in Las Vegas watching us on Free Speech TV. Hey, Mary, what's up? Mary? I'm not hearing Mary. Mary's on line 1, Shira, if you want to check it out. Devon in Forest Lake, Minnesota, watching us on YouTube. Hey, Devon, what's up?
Well, I think you're spot on there, on the opposite side of the argument. And in terms of Nancy Pelosi maybe making a strategic move here so that people don't get too patriotic about impeachment. But I think it's putting the cart before the horse to say that we need to convince the Republicans before we go forward with impeachment. And your reference to Barry Goldwater, I grew up in Scottsdale. I met Barry Goldwater. Mm-hmm. He came to my elementary school. Wow. And my parents loved Barry Goldwater, and they loved Richard Nixon. And in the end, my dad had us sit down and watch Nixon resign so that we would always remember it. And it broke his heart on one level.
Oh, I said the same thing with my father. The exact same thing.
Yeah. So it's an exercise in the Constitution. Civics are the oath that we swear to uphold the Constitution and defend it against all enemies, common, foreign, and domestic. So the people need to learn that this isn't about somebody lying about a sexual impropriety. Right. The impeachment clause is about a president who has betrayed, in this case, I believe, our country. This is about a high crime and misdemeanor. This is about doing what our founding fathers envisioned when they foresaw the worst.
Devon, I get all that. The question is, are we there yet?
Well, I think the way to get there is the way my father got there, by watching the impeachment hearings, right, by hearing finally Barry Goldwater, and I don't know who it is that has the integrity. Maybe people will listen to Romney. Maybe, hopefully somebody in the party will come to their senses and play the role that Barry Goldwater played. But if we don't get the ball rolling, if we don't start putting some sunshine into these dark corners, we're not going to get there. We can't expect Republicans to wake up one morning and say, "Okay, let's start impeachment."
Yeah.
The country will come along.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that Peter Rodino's hearings in the House and who was the senator? Sam Ervin, I think, in the Senate. When they had the impeachment discussions, as I recall. I mean, it's been a lot of years. But that's the thing that came out. I mean, it was John Dean's testimony that led to the testimony of, what was his name? Fred somebody or other, the guy who put in the White House taping system. That led to that testimony, and then that led to the House subpoenaing the tapes, and that led to the Supreme Court saying to Nixon, you've got to give him the tapes, and that's what led to Nixon resigning. I mean, none of that would have happened if the House had not convened impeachment hearings.
The hearings. And let's not forget Ellsberger releasing the Pentagon Papers. Let's not forget the power of shining that light of truth. It emboldens people who have it on their heart, their conscience, their will to be reelected, to do the right thing. So they just need that little push.
So maybe the analogy maybe we should just forget the Bill Clinton analogies altogether and go with the Nixon analogies. But, again, back then, Barry Goldwater was the one who informed Richard Nixon he had to step down. I don't see a Barry Goldwater today. Devon, thank you for the call. So there have been 2 impeachment attempts in my lifetime. One was against Richard Nixon. The other was against Bill Clinton. And the impeachment hearings against Richard Nixon, the Watergate hearings, led to John Dean's testimony, which led to, what's his name, Fred somebody or other, testifying that there was a White House taping system, which led to the Congress, the House of Representatives subpoenaing those tapes. And then Sam Ervin in the Senate, Peter Rodino, as I recall, in the House. It's been a lot of years. And then once they subpoenaed those tapes, the White House refused, just like they're refusing right now to go along with Elijah Cummings' committee and the House Oversight Committee. And then that went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said to Nixon, you've got to come up with the tapes. Coming up with the tapes then led directly to Barry Goldwater walking over to the White House and saying, the Republicans have listened to the tapes too. You're toast. You got to resign. Put Jerry Ford in there. And so that's how that played out. On the other hand, Bill Clinton was actually strengthened by being impeached. He didn't have to pound his chest and say, see, I just owned the Republicans. Although Trump will, and it could be even worse. So is this more a Nixon thing or a Clinton thing? What's going on with this? Marianne in Phoenix, Arizona. Hey, Marianne, thanks for listening to 950 AM.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I really agree with Nancy Pelosi. I think no more wasting time, money, energy. The Democrats need to work on medical care, protecting the environment, getting rid of dark money, consumer protection, et cetera, and they have to have something to show the American people that we deserve to win the presidency and the Senate and to keep the House. That's my opinion.
A, are you suggesting that the Democrats can't walk and chew gum? And B, they've passed a lot of really good legislation so far, and it's gotten basically, perfunctory mentions in the media. It isn't the topic of the Sunday shows like it would be if Republicans, or historically when Republicans pass, big legislation. That becomes the topic. But when Democrats do, it never makes it to the Sunday shows. It never makes it to the network news.
What I think they need. Yeah, but they need to work on that. They need to really get out there and have the media have to give them attention somehow for what they're passing. And I don't know. We're close to 2020. We need to just get that idiot out of there. And that's what I think. I think it's just a waste of money, time, et cetera. And I agree with you. I think he will just gloat if nothing happens, if the Senate basically doesn't follow through on it, and he's just going to sit up there and have something more to gloat.
Yeah, that's my biggest concern. But on the other hand, basically, by not impeaching him, are we telling future presidents, if you want to be a con man, a liar, a cheat, a thief, that's fine. Mm-hmm. You can be president and all those things.
No, I agree with you, and I think one thing, though, that's happened since this presidency is that I no longer believe in karma, I have to say.
Well,
hang on.
Hang on. We don't know what's coming. Marianne, thank you for the call. Yeah. Excellent points, all. Mary in Las Vegas. Hey, Mary.
Hey, Tom. I waver on the impeachment thing, but it would be nice to shine a light on every wrongdoing he's done.
Mm-hmm.
I wish we could indict him, get his tax returns and find out all about the money laundering.
I'm with you on that. I'm absolutely with you on that. I think that the House of Representatives now, they've asked for documents from the White House. The White House has said no. They should issue a subpoena. If the White House refuses to go along with the subpoena, they should take that to the Supreme Court. Then God only knows what's going to happen, but they need to fight this. And frankly, I think the Special Prosecutor's Office and the other federal prosecutors involved, both in Washington, D.C. and in the 2nd District of New York, need to be actually indicting Donald Trump rather than naming him. I mean, Michael Cohen is going to prison for 3 years because Donald Trump ordered him to make a hush money payment to Stormy Daniels in order to disrupt the election in 2016. That's why Cohen is going to prison. And he's going to prison for a crime that he committed at the ordering of Donald Trump, according to the court. So why doesn't that same court also say, if this is 3 years in jail for Michael Cohen for doing what Trump told him to do, Trump should get 3 years too?
Yeah, well, I think there's so many things to address. I think Ellis wants a job on the Supreme Court. That's why he only gave Manafort 4 years.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's and then
he's too old. Trump won't put him on.
And I don't think the GOP's gonna. They're just gonna back Trump because he's making them filthy rich. You got McConnell. He's gonna stonewall every bill that the Dems bring forward. He's just not going to bring it to the floor for a vote.
Yep, which is what he's doing with H.R. 1.
Anything meaningful, unless it's something they think can help Trump, like infrastructure. Make him look good. Oh, look, I'm working with the Democrats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a complex one. Mary, excellent points. Thank you very much. Claro in Redway, California. Last minute here of the hour, Claro. Quick one.
Yeah, hi. How you doing? I just wanted to bring up the fact that the most important thing to Trump is being reelected.
Because that's his get-out-of-jail card for another 4 years in his mind.
Exactly. And as far as impeachment, there's going to be investigations that are going to make it very clear what he's done, and will hopefully get him to not be reelected. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Claro. We'll see. I mean, I think it's entirely possible that the crimes that Trump has committed are going to catch up with him in ways that are going to be just so indisputable. And maybe instead of impeachment, indictment is what we should all be talking about. Hey, there is no prohibition against indictment. You've got 2 Republican attorney generals in the past, both of whose presidents had committed treason, who have authored opinions saying that, you can't indict a sitting president because he's so busy. Trump is so busy, really? 3 hours, 5 hours a day of executive time watching Fox News? You can indict this guy. Come on.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
Over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you, and it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You could sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out. And sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff, and you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great. Well, it's Tuesday, only 4 days, Tuesday through Friday, more to go in the Free Speech TV Fund Drive. So, reaching back in memory to the National Lampoon and their cover with the dog and the gun, you'll recall. Make your donation now or I'm going to shoot the bear, the Bernie bear. Remember when we gave these away years ago? Anyway, I say that only half in jest, because if you want to see a Democrat as president, we have to have a Democratic or a progressive media landscape. In fact, if you want to see a progressive as president, we have to have a progressive media landscape. And that is not CNN and MSNBC. That is Free Speech TV. It's right. It's not even NPR or PBS. None of those organizations are progressive. And most of them, in fact, kind of minimize and poo-poo progressive ideas and progressive plans and things like that. Here on Free Speech TV, you've got serious progressive programming, real progressive programming. And if we don't hit our fund drive goals, we're essentially shooting that, right? We're taking a bite out of it. We're hurting that. In fact, our failure to hit our goal in the last time around, and I think the time before that too, have, I believe, slowed down the ability of free speech to roll out new programs. It concerns me tremendously that every single one of our fund drives, we seem to be raising less and less. So, we're way behind on this one. We're like 30% behind. So we need your help, and we need your help now. Please call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution. There are some premiums. There's the Jesus Was a Socialist bumper sticker. There's with the $20 gift, with a $60 gift, there's the Free Speech TV six-sticker design pack. With a $72 gift, you get a copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. Heads up, that's not going to be released until June, so, hopefully we can ship them in May, but we'll see. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie. With a $360 gift, you get everything, the Jesus Was a Socialist pin, the sticker pack, the Hidden History of the Second Amendment, the t-shirt, and the hoodie. With a $500 gift, you can attend this webinar that Louise and I are putting together on resolving fear, anxiety, and stress in these troubled times, and how, in fact, in some ways, to even use those things as a positive force in your life. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out with us for the last hour of the show, and then we'll go grab some lunch. So those are the goodies that we're offering, and the premiums. But the bottom line is that you hear news on Free Speech TV, you hear stories, and you see stories on Free Speech TV. You get a feel for how things are in the world on Free Speech TV, and not just my program, but all the great programming on this network. That for a long, long time, this network was just Amy Goodman, and and then they started carrying my show. We had a little webinar camera sitting in our studio more than a decade ago, and we just streamed the show live, and it caught an audience. People were like, "Hey, that's kind of cool." And then Free Speech TV expanded out from that and put Stephanie on, and then they started adding other programs, and now we've got, a real live TV network really rolling along here. And, we're very proud to have been there essentially at the beginning, or at least at the beginning of this modern reincarnation of moving from a network that was just playing, Amy's show and documentaries to a network that's actually got, live programming much of the day and interactive programming in many cases. We're very pleased and proud to have played a role in that and to have been kind of proof of concept for that, for the network. And now we need your help to keep it going. It's just that simple. That's what it boils down to. We need your help to keep it going. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. We would like to grow the network, but right now I'm more concerned with just keeping it on the air and keeping this show on this network. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. If you want to participate, if you want to help out, if you feel that you're getting value from Free Speech TV. Somebody on Twitter yesterday said, you know, I'm giving up oil changes to be able to send that $45 to Free Speech TV. You know, I almost responded saying, don't give up your oil changes. I mean, there are limits, right? You don't want to ruin your car. On the other hand, you know, for, 2 decades now, I've always used synthetic oil in my car, so it only needs to change the oil every 20, 30,000 miles, although, you know, you still do it more frequently than that. But and also the synthetic oils are, you know, apparently less hard on the environment. But in any case, that was sweet, right? That was a really sweet sentiment that, you know, this is what I'm willing to give up. You know, maybe give up going out for dinner one night a month, you know, or give up that Starbucks, you know, one day a week, or what, you know, whatever it may be that to help keep this network on the air. But please now call 877-378-8669. Please.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back to the second hour of our program. Last hour, we talked to Dr. Justin Frank, who said that Michael Cohen should fear for his life and that Donald Trump is a dangerous mobster capable of calling for the killing of people, and that he's very concerned that Trump won't leave the White House if he loses in 2020, and it could spark some sort of a civil war of types. I mean, it's pretty shocking stuff. We've been talking also about whether or not Nancy Pelosi is right in that the House should not begin impeachment hearings, at least until something comes out that will convince Republicans he should leave. You know, that's a whole other conversation. We'll continue with that. But another thing I'd like to bring into this, a state representative in Georgia, a state where Louise and I lived for over a decade, the chief deputy whip of the Georgia House Democrats, the business strategist, lawyer, 5-term member of the Georgia House of Representatives, has introduced legislation that specifically calls for requiring men to obtain permission from their sexual partner before obtaining a prescription for Viagra, banning vasectomies, criminalizing doctors who perform them, classifying sex without a condom as aggravated assault, and requiring paternity tests at 8 weeks of pregnancy and requiring expectant fathers to begin paying child support immediately, and a 24-hour waiting period for any men who wish to purchase porn or sex toys in the state of Georgia. I think this is brilliant. Whether it's theater or not is something that we can debate, but I think this is brilliant. And on the line with us is State Representative Darshan Kedrick, 5-term member of the Georgia House of Representatives, who is the author of this piece of legislation. It is in the Georgia House. It's called HB 481. And Representative Kendrick, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. To what extent is this a statement on your part, and presumably the other women in the Georgia House of Representatives, about how, you know, about what happens when you try to regulate people's bodies versus you know, a serious effort at legislation?
Yeah, so a few things. So this is legislation that has not been drafted yet. So the tweet that I sent out yesterday was sort of my email to legislative counsel, who, of course, drafts our legislation. So it has not been drafted yet. So I haven't seen any details of the proposals. But this is a tongue-in-cheek package of legislation that I'm naming the Testicular Bill of Rights. And it really is to highlight the ridiculousness of HB 481, which is the heartbeat bill, or as I have renamed it, the women are too dumb to make decisions about their self bill. And it really is to point out the absurdity when we start talking about making choices for other people's body and putting the power in the opposite sex. And so, as you can see, it has really spurred discussion, which was the purpose of it. And it has gotten people talking and thinking and asking questions. And even if you don't agree necessarily with the tactics or with the bills, it has gotten people talking about this bill, which is still pending in the state Senate right now. And it has people talking about the type of legislation that we want in our country and how far do we want it to go when it really starts to regulate the organs and productive organs of other people. So it's gotten discussion really on fire.
You are dancing fairly close to a few things that other countries have actually gone with. The reason why Sweden wanted to prosecute Julian Assange is because he had a consensual sex with a woman who spent the night with him and with a condom. And then in the middle of the night, she woke up to his trying to have sex with her again. She did. She thought everything was good. She thought he was wearing a condom, and it turned out he wasn't. And so she charged him with assault because he wasn't wearing a condom. And that's one piece of your legislation. I mean, that's actually the law in Sweden. And the paternity testing at some point in pregnancy and the father being immediately responsible for child support, that's something that doesn't seem to me altogether irrational.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mix of bills that, are totally outrageous, like the not having sex, sex without the condom, to ideas that, interestingly enough, people are getting behind and supporting. But the overall theme, no matter how outrageous or how rational the bill may seem, is to get the conversation started. Or restarted and continuing the conversation about the absurdity in some of these bills that want to mess with women's reproductive rights. And I think I've accomplished that.
Right. There's also, one of the other tongue-in-cheek things that has been done historically is going back to kind of the really hardcore traditional Catholic and some evangelical Christians position that birth control is a violation of God's law because that literally conception does not start at the moment of fertilization. It starts at the moment of the beginning of sex, the intention, and that should be associated with reproduction exclusively. And therefore, there have been in the past legislators who have tried to say that any man who masturbates and spills his semen, which, by the way, is specifically called out in the Bible as a crime as bad as being, in the 600 and some odd things in Deuteronomy, or I think it's Leviticus, I guess it is, where they say, a man shall not lay with a man. They've used that for years to justify their homophobia and laws against homosexuality. But there's it also says you can't masturbate if you're a man. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I will tell you that there is actually a bill that has been proposed, actually filed by a colleague of mine, Representative Park Cannon, who represents Atlanta. Mm-hmm. She actually filed a similar bill to draw on some of the terms that were in the heartbeat bill. So essentially what her bill does is anytime that a man excretes semen, they have to report it to the police. And that's to mirror the provision in the heartbeat bill that says in order for you to obtain an abortion because of rape, you have to file a police report. Otherwise, even if you're raped, you cannot get an abortion unless you file that police report. So ironically that you would bring that up, because that bill has already been filed by a colleague of mine. And let's be honest, there are many things that are chosen to be followed in the Bible. I'm a Christian myself, attend a church regularly and was raised in the church. And we see a lot of times that the Bible is taken out of context and used when it's convenient for people to make their arguments. So I'm not surprised about that statement you just made.
And taken a little too literally. This issue, as we're getting into it, this is about as funny as a heart attack. I mean, there are in I believe Honduras and El Salvador. I could be wrong. But in two of the Central American countries right now, we're getting refugees. These are Catholic countries. The anti-abortion folks have gotten so aggressive in these countries that there are women who are imprisoned for having had miscarriages. That if you have a miscarriage in one of those countries, you have to report it to the police, period, no matter what. Or you can be charged with trying to induce an abortion. And in many cases, these women are imprisoned for having miscarriages where the police or somebody in their family said that they intentionally fell down that flight of stairs, kind of thing, and criminalizing miscarriages. And I mean, we think this is a joke. There's people in prison for this in our hemisphere.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the points that was made was that because in HB 481, the heartbeat bill, fetuses are characterized as people. When you think about that from a criminal law standpoint, that means if somebody is committing a felony in the presence of a pregnant woman, even if she doesn't know if she's pregnant, you could be charged with child endangerment because that fetus counts as a child, even though it's in utero.
Right.
Or, for example, if somebody is involved in a vehicular homicide and one person is charged, if there is a pregnant woman, even if she doesn't know if she's pregnant, that just ups the number of counts for that vehicular homicide. I mean, we are talking taking this to a whole new level when we start talking and counting fetuses in census data and counting fetuses on tax returns.
Right. And what happens if it's just what if it's just a fender bender but the person has a miscarriage the next day and says it's because I was in this car accident? Is that person who ran into them in the parking lot going to be charged with murder?
Exactly. So when I tell you this is the slipperiest of slopes that we're going down, but apart from the fact that it is blatantly unconstitutional, which of course all the people who support this know it's unconstitutional because it's meant to be a test case for the Supreme Court. But aside from that, it just doesn't seem like it was well thought out. I mean, you can claim a fetus on your tax returns. Think about that.
Wow, that's amazing.
You can claim a fetus on your tax return. I mean, I have got to imagine that somebody in some department is thinking, how exactly are we going to prove that?
Right.
Or even if we could prove it, how much more resources and paperwork do we need to handle that? And what happens if it's multiple? You have multiple babies in the stomach, and then what happens if all of them don't make it to birth? I mean, just from a logical standpoint, it doesn't seem like it's well thought out. So there are multiple problems with this bill, so many that I can't even name, and that's the reason why I think the conversation needs to be had about these bills that are emotional and knee-jerk because we're talking about lives and lives of women here in the state of Georgia that happens to have the #1 rate of maternity deaths, but yet we want to pass a bill that's going to increase that number. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And when I introduced you, Representative Darshan Kendrick, I said your bill was HB 481. Actually, your bill is a rebuke to HB 481, which is the heartbeat bill that is before the Georgia legislature. I wish you all the very best in getting this together and using this as a great vehicle to get the word out. Representative Kendrick, thanks so much for dropping by today and for talking with us and for doing the great work you're doing there in the Georgia legislature.
Well, thank you. Thank you for giving me a platform to continue the discussion. I appreciate it.
It is absolutely my pleasure. I think that what you are doing is like bravery squared. It is such noble work. Georgia State Representative Darshan Kendrick, 5-term member of the Georgia House of Representatives, representing the 93rd District of Georgia, and Chief Deputy Whip of the Georgia House Democrats, and formerly a business strategist and lawyer. Really solid person here who is proposing something that I think should cause us all to just stop and say, interesting. It's 18 minutes past the hour.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. And welcome back. Blaine in Thousand Oaks, California. Hey, Blaine, thanks for listening to KPFK. What's up?
Tom, you're my hero.
Thank you,
man. Listening to Frank, Dr. Frank, you're speaking words that have been bouncing around my head for weeks.
Yeah.
In my humble opinion, not speaking of impeachment, not only are the Democrats Trump enablers, but they're complicit in reinforcing the normalization of the daily insanity and destruction of our country.
I cannot argue against that. I agree with everything you said, but I would put a big and at the end, not necessarily a but. And if Trump is not successfully removed from office, if he wins in the Senate, it will make him stronger rather than weaker. This is not, the danger here is that this becomes the Clinton impeachment instead of the Nixon impeachment.
Yeah, well, that's a theory. And, I don't know, coming from a position of fear and political calculation, the Democrats, once again, it seems like they're going to repeat the history of, what comes afterwards. It's like, they're afraid of, like Pelosi said and what Al Gore said, they don't want to disrupt the country. But what came after?
Right.
George Bush didn't disrupt the country through the Iraq War and the tax cuts.
By lying us into two wars, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, think of all the millions of people that died over that because Al Gore couldn't wait another couple of months and hold out and count the votes.
Right.
I mean, look at the repercussions after that.
Yeah, and when they did count the vote a year later, they discovered that Al Gore actually won Florida.
Exactly.
By any method, by any method of tabulation.
And as far as Pelosi, she's the same thing. I don't want to disrupt the country, but I've heard from more than one Watergate prosecutor that say, and they disagree with her.
Yeah.
Because they say when they started an impeachment for Nixon in the Watergate, they didn't have bipartisan support either.
No, they did not.
You have to start.
They also didn't have the tapes. It was the impeachment hearings. I'm not certain that those were specifically impeachment hearings or that was simply the Judiciary Committee, but it was the committee hearing. Go ahead. Do you know?
It doesn't a signed check for $70,000 signed by the president. That is not enough.
Yeah.
I could name a dozen things that are like normalized that are impeachable things that he's done.
Yeah.
He said right on TV, well, I fired Comey because, the whole Russian thing. I mean, he admitted it. It's on tape. It's insanity to me that that's just...
Well, and we know that he's given intelligence that we got from the Israelis to the Russians, that was pretty disruptive. And had any Democratic president done that, I suspect that would have been the end of the show right there.
Oh yeah, one of those, and the Republicans would be, screaming impeachment. Just one thing out of the 20 that Trump has already.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's the typical Democrats drag their feet and not just, grow a pair and just let's get on with it.
Well, Democrats don't do outrage well, and it seems like that's pretty much all Republicans have, is outrage. Unless it's Tucker Carlson making racist and misogynistic statements, and then suddenly they go to radio silence. Blaine, thanks for the call. Yeah,
right.
Amen. Thanks a lot for the call. It's great to hear from you. We'll be right back. It's 22 minutes and change past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Occupying the media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. We'll be right back. Hey, over at ThomHartman.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartman.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at thomhartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at thomhartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff, and you'll find it all right there on our website at thomhartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. So is Nancy Pelosi making a mistake by saying we're not going to hold impeachment hearings against Trump until or unless the crimes that he has committed are so obvious that our Republican colleagues agree? I mean, those were not her words verbatim by any stretch, actually, but I believe that to be the import of, or the intent of those words. Is she right? If you, on the one hand, you could look back at the Watergate hearings, and I'm not sure that those started as impeachment hearings. They were looking into a crime, much like right now you have the House Oversight Committee looking into the crimes associated with Michael Cohen. Excuse me, they were looking into a crime, and in the process of looking into that crime, John Dean came forward and said, well, you know, there's this cancer on the presidency, and then that led to Fred, what was Fred's name again, Sean? You looked it up. Buzzhart, that's right, Fred Buzzhart, testifying that, yeah, I put a tape system into the White House, or I was involved in it, or whatever, there's a secret tape there. And then that led to the committee going to the Supreme Court and saying, we want the tapes, and the Supreme Court saying to Nixon, you've got to turn them over. And that, of course, was the end of the Nixon presidency. So they never even, I don't think, got to impeachment. So basically, it sounds to me like what Pelosi is saying is, let's keep doing this process that led to Nixon's resignation. Would that be a more desirable outcome than doing it the way the Republicans did, where they said, we're going to impeach Bill Clinton? But even they didn't start with impeachment. They started with the Whitewater investigation into a 30-year-old land deal. And then when they didn't find anything there, they rolled that over to Hillary Clinton's being a lawyer at the Rose Law Firm, 30 years in advance. And nothing there. They looked into whether she illegally fired some people in the travel office at the White House. It was called Travelgate. You had Rosegate. You had Whitewatergate. And then they looked into these charges against Bill Clinton of sexual assault from Jennifer Flowers. And when that didn't pan out, then they started digging even deeper, and they ultimately discovered Monica Lewinsky. And boom, that then triggered the impeachment hearings. So they found the crime, and then they went for the impeachment. But it wasn't a crime that the Democrats were willing to convict him over in the Senate. They felt like it was a terrible thing, but it was a terrible thing that he had to explain to his wife, not to the country. And, so it may be that what Pelosi is saying isn't really quite as outside of the mainstream as we all think, because, the Republicans held a whole bunch of hearings before they started talking impeachment, looking for crimes that Clinton might be guilty of. And they finally, busted him, of course, for lying about his affair with Monica. Ditto with Nixon. Or is there enough evidence of crimes? Hang on.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Is there enough obvious evidence of crimes right now? I mean, Michael Cohen's canceled checks for $235,000 checks for covering, for rigging an election, that we should be impeaching. Well, it's Tuesday, only 4 days, Tuesday through Friday, more to go in the Free Speech TV Fund Drive. So, reaching back in memory to the National Lampoon and their cover with the dog and the gun, you'll recall. Make your donation now or I'm going to shoot the bear, the Bernie bear. Remember when we gave these away years ago? Anyway, I say that only half in jest, because if you want to see a Democrat as president, we have to have a Democratic or a progressive media landscape. In fact, if you want to see a progressive as president, we have to have a progressive media landscape. And that is not CNN and MSNBC. That is Free Speech TV. It's right. It's not even NPR or PBS. None of those organizations are progressive. And most of them, in fact, kind of minimize and poo-poo progressive ideas and progressive plans and things like that. Here on Free Speech TV, you've got serious progressive programming, real progressive programming. And if we don't hit our fund drive goals, we're essentially shooting that, right? We're taking a bite out of it. We're hurting that. In fact, you know, our failure to hit our goal in the last time around, and I think the time before that too, have, I believe, slowed down the ability of free speech to roll out new programs. It concerns me tremendously that, you know, every single one of our fund drives, we seem to be raising less and less. So, I mean, we're way behind on this one. We're like 30% behind. So we need your help, and we need your help now. Please call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution. There are some premiums. There's the Jesus Was a Socialist bumper sticker. There's with the $20 gift, with a $60 gift. There's the Free Speech TV six-sticker design pack. With a $72 gift, you get a copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. You know, heads up, that's not going to be released until June, so, you know, hopefully we can ship them in May, but we'll see. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie. With a $360 gift, you get everything, the Jesus Was a Socialist pin, the sticker pack, the Hidden History of the Second Amendment, the t-shirt, and the hoodie. With a $500 gift, you can attend this webinar that Louise and I are putting together on resolving fear, anxiety, and stress in these troubled times, and how, in fact, in some ways, to even use those things as a positive force in your life. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out with us for the last hour of the show, and then we'll go grab some lunch. So those are the goodies that we're offering, and you know the premiums. But the bottom line is that you hear news on Free Speech TV, you hear stories and you see stories on Free Speech TV. You get a feel for how things are in the world on Free Speech TV, and not just my program, but you know, all the great programming on this network. That you know, for a long, long time, this network was just Amy Goodman, and you know, and then they started carrying my show. We had a little webinar camera sitting in our studio more than a decade ago, and we just streamed the show live, and it caught an audience. People were like, "Hey, that's kind of cool." And then Free Speech TV expanded out from that and put Stephanie on, and then they started adding other programs, and now we've got, you know, a real live TV network really rolling along here. And, you know, we're very proud to have been there essentially at the beginning, or at least at the beginning of this modern reincarnation of moving from a network that was just playing, you know, Amy's show and documentaries to a network that's actually got, you know, live programming much of the day and interactive programming in many cases. We're very pleased and proud to have played a role in that, and to have been kind of proof of concept for that, for the network. And now we need your help to keep it going. It's just that simple. That's what it boils down to. We need your help to keep it going. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. We would like to grow the network, but right now I'm more concerned with just keeping it on the air and keeping this show on this network. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. If you want to participate, if you want to help out, if you feel that you're getting value from Free Speech TV. Somebody on Twitter yesterday said, you know, I'm giving up oil changes to be able to send that $45 to Free Speech TV. You know, I almost responded saying, don't give up your oil changes. I mean, there are limits, right? You don't want to ruin your car. On the other hand, you know, for, geez, 2 decades now, I've always used synthetic oil in my car, so it only needs to change the oil every 20, 30,000 miles, although, you know, you still do it more frequently than that. But, and also the synthetic oils are, you know, apparently less hard on the environment. But in any case, that was sweet, right? That was a really sweet sentiment that, this is what I'm willing to give up. Maybe give up going out for dinner one night a month, or give up that Starbucks, one day a week, or whatever it may be that to help keep this network on the air. But please now call 877-378-8669. Please.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook.
Welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. A couple of other things worthy of note, and then I'll pick up your phone calls. Number one, Christopher Hasson, the Coast Guard lieutenant who was going to, quote, murder innocent civilians on a scale rarely seen in our country. And those innocent civilians were, to use the word that he used, the libtards. He was going after Democratic politicians and high-profile progressives, including people in the media. This guy, with all his weapons and everything, pled not guilty or pleaded not guilty yesterday in U.S. District Court in Maryland. A story that, in my opinion, is getting nowhere near the attention it deserves. This is domestic terrorism. This was an attempt at domestic terrorism. This was a man who was planning to kill many, many people for their politics. And we're largely ignoring it. So there's that. There's this big scandal right now that's unfolding today with these charges against over 50 people, most of them people who were paying bribes, including a few actresses and CEOs and whatnot, paying bribes to this guy who was kind of the bribe broker, where he was bribing college coaches and college admissions officers and test proctors in order to get their kids into college. In most cases, apparently the kids didn't know that this is how they got into Ivy League colleges. But this, in my mind, this simply shows that we've got this strain in this country of well, I don't care what the law is, I don't care what the rules are, I'm rich, they don't apply to me. I mean, this was a rich person's gig, right? People are paying literally $1 million to get their kid into Harvard or Yale to this bribe guy, because there was no way that they could, get their kid in legitimately. And so it's just another example of the basic immorality that seems to be associated with great wealth, which we're seeing on display every day in the Republican Party and in the White House. John in Minneapolis. Hey, John, your thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I am not in favor of impeachment, but I think that I am in favor of, taking care of anything that is illegal and going after that at the same time that we, do progressive kinds of things, because I think culturally, morally, ethically, in so many ways, this society has changed a lot since Nixon's time, and I don't really see the advantage of it. It's just my opinion, but right. I want to move on, is what I would like to do, and I think that if we take care of it just legally through that process, that we're just going to alienate a lot of people that possibly, because, I mean, if you look at Bernie Sanders, he actually appealed to people that voted for Trump, and Trump, he claimed things that he just didn't deliver, like with Medicare, that he was going to be supportive of Medicare, and now he's turning around and saying that he wants to remove in his budget $800 billion out of Medicare.
Right. So and $200 billion out of Medicaid and $26 billion out of Social Security.
Yep.
$1.1 trillion of cuts in domestic programs, cutting Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, by 16%.
Food supplement, SNAP program.
Yeah. Cut the EPA by 31%.
He wants to increase the military budget, which has already been increased. I mean, he's just... he's reprehensible. We're stuck with him, but I think that we can, get rid of him in a very judicious way, because I don't think it's the same. I think that Republicans had a totally different mindset than they do now, and they just look at it. I mean, they're not dealing with reality anymore. I mean, you can just see it.
And my recollection is, again, that Nixon did not face impeachment hearings. He was facing inquiries into possible criminal activity, just like Elijah Cummings was holding last week with regard to Michael Cohen. And that when the level of the crimes became so obvious that the Speaker of the House was about to call for impeachment hearings. That was the point at which Barry Goldwater sat down with him, or walked over to the White House and sat down with Nixon and said, "You got to leave. You know, this is going to work."
And you know, David K. Johnston did, you know, I'm reiterating some of the things I heard this morning. He said, just keep it on. Just keep doing what you're doing. Yeah. And then, you know, we also have the New York State prosecution also. And
that's going to be the big one, frankly, I think. Yeah, especially if they go after Manafort, because then it's not pardonable. So far, Manafort, it's so obvious that Manafort has been offered a pardon. I mean, you know, everybody has now admitted that Manafort and Trump's lawyers, Manafort's lawyers and Trump's lawyers have discussed a pardon. And that's the only rational explanation for the way that Manafort is behaving. Yeah. And then Trump coming out saying, "Oh yeah, I talked about a pardon with Michael Cohen." Oh, you talk about pardons with anybody? I mean, really? So, you know, but if Manafort is charged with state crimes, that pardon won't count unless the Republicans are successful in getting this case before the Supreme Court, where they say if you're charged with the same crime in state and federal court, that's double jeopardy, and therefore the state can't charge him with that crime, which means that they'd have to find a different crime in New York State, which they may well be looking for, and I hope they are. John, I need to move along, but thank you for the call. Well said. Dave in Federal Way, Washington. Hey, Dave, what's up?
Hey, not too much, Tom. Hey, I'm going to give my opinion on this really, really quick, but it's a complex topic, so I'm not sure if I'll have enough time. I think you'll appreciate it as well because you remember Vietnam clearly. I have been worried about this scenario with Trump ever since David Petraeus rewrote the low-intensity conflict manual in around 1991, 92. He changed it to the operations other than war. I compared the differences. Low-intensity conflict, that came out during Vietnam. Right. And what David Petraeus did is he made the enemy, the threat, far more nebulous. Like, for instance, guerrilla fighters versus terrorists. Right? That he made it much more nebulous, much more vague. And what I started to see is, okay, we could partner with a country like, say, Iraq. And we could help the government of Iraq sustain itself by combating its internal threats. Well, what I started noticing is a pattern that all these threats and all these techniques to keep the government in Baghdad in power apply to the government in Washington as well. The exact same scenarios could happen to us. So I've been worried about it. I've been concerned.
So you're suggesting,
like
Dave,
Trump.
if I get this right, and I realize you're a veteran, you've been inside a lot of these machines and understand how they work. These, you know, I don't literally mean machines. You know what I'm talking about. That Iraq was a practice run for basically a coup d'etat here in the United States?
Well, sort of. Okay, look, Trump, and I hate to say this because I don't think Trump's the brightest bulb in the box, but I have noticed a pattern in his actions. Like, for instance, he keeps saying presidential harassment. That's the same term Richard Nixon used because he said, look, I am a president during time of war. I cannot be distracted by this stuff. Right. Now, Trump, you know, and that's what started worrying me. I'm like, wait a minute. Trump has got some advisors below him that are extremely sophisticated. I've noticed this. Trump himself isn't that bright. But what they could do is use a technique like a very vague cyber attack against, say, I'll just use L.A. as an example. The power grid shut down. They could suspend constitutional government. And they could also say, look, it's nobody's fault, but the people in L.A. are under very bad influences. And what I worried about the other day was I heard about this database of people going down to the border. There's a database of people going down to the border to protest
and journalists.
The detention of children.
And journalists. They're stopping journalists at the border because their names are on the list. And that's, I mean, this is like Nixon's enemy list. I mean, this is a huge, huge story that turned into a one-hour story in the media a couple of days ago.
So what we need to do is we need to move ahead with impeachment, even though politically it may not be advantageous. But I think Beijing and Moscow are behind this because they started analyzing us during when we invaded Iraq. Yeah. They said, look, America still has the same cultural fault lines. Nothing has changed. Let's energize these fault lines.
Oh, I think they've been analyzing us all along. Yeah, I get it. So you're suggesting that the House should start impeachment hearings as opposed to continuing the Oversight and Judiciary Committee and Intelligence Committee hearings into specific crimes. Is that what you're saying, Dave?
Yes, and we should, we need to reinforce the fact that we are a nation of laws. Even though our president can classify and declassify anything he wants.
I totally got it. And I want to get other callers in here. Thank you, Dave. Thomas in New York City. Hey, Thomas, what's up? Thanks for watching us on YouTube.
Yes. How you doing?
Good.
Tom. Listen, I want just a comment. I'm going to tell you the reason why I believe Nancy Pelosi don't want impeachment. Because, as you know, Barack Obama was the smartest president that we ever had.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So, trust me when I tell you, they got dirt on Trump right now that they don't want to talk about.
Who is they?
As soon as he get out of office, he better get in his 707 and fly to Russia.
Yeah.
You hear me?
Yeah, no, I get it, and I think that there's probably an enormous amount of truth to what you're saying, Thomas. Who is the they that you're speculating have the dirt on Trump, and frankly, why aren't they using it?
Well, I'm gonna tell you, President Obama was the smartest president we ever had, and if you remember, he said if you let Trump be president, he's a danger to the country and to the world.
I remember.
You remember that?
Yes.
And
he said the American people would never tolerate that.
That's what I'm saying. And trust me when I tell you, Barack Obama is a lawyer, and that's the reason why Nancy Pelosi don't want to impeach him. That's the reason why.
Because they have something deeper on Trump, in your opinion.
Yes. And one more thing. You remember that Republican that told you that people don't want to donate to Thom Hartmann?
Right.
I want to donate, so put me on hold.
Okay, all righty.
All right.
We don't take donations here, Thomas. That's for Free Speech TV, and many of our Pacifica stations also are having their fundraising drives right now. But you're watching this on YouTube. It's a whole different thing. But Thomas, thank you for your kind words. And I suspect that in particular Robert Mueller, but I suspect that there's a lot of folks in Washington, D.C. and in New York City and state who know a lot more about Donald Trump than they're letting on right now. Question is how long before it comes out.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archive.
And when it does come out, what's the venue going to be? Is it going to be in the news? Is it going to be in a courtroom? Is it going to be in an impeachment hearing? Where does this happen? And welcome back. Michelle in Kansas City, Missouri. Hey, Michelle, what's on your mind today?
Tom, I wanted to give some context to the term rat and mob neighborhood. 'Cause I grew up in a mob neighborhood. I grew up with the underboss's kids. My uncle's best friends with a national guy. So we knew what the word rat meant. When you said a rat, you knew he was a marked man. You knew he was not to be trusted. He was a snitch. He couldn't even get a job, not even at General Motors, because the union was involved with the he would drive down the street, and old women would give him the malouk, the evil eye. So you know what that means, and you knew he was a dead man walking. Yeah. So don't let them I know what Trump is saying when he says this. I mean, in that world, you have the terms that you know what they mean.
So you're rebutting, I forget his name, the caller that we had earlier from Virginia who said that, Trump is just, rat is just a word that you use to slur people. He wasn't actually calling for Cohen to be murdered when he gets to prison or to be a marked man.
Trump uses that word on purpose.
Yeah.
That is so ingrained in me, that term rat, that I knew it was marked, because when the Republicans refer to the Democrat Party, in the back of my head, I think they want me eliminated. I know what that term means.
Well,
that's what Trump knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, that's what Senator what's-his-name said back in the day. He said, it's a Democrat Party and emphasis on the rat, right?
There's a lot of old mobsters still in prison. They ain't going to get out and have nothing to lose.
That was Joe McCarthy who said that. Yeah, Michelle, your voice just faded out, but you made your point. You made it very well. So thank you very much for the call, Vince in Pomeroy, Iowa. Hey, Vince, thanks for watching Free Speech on your Roku box. What's up?
I want to say that the Democrats need to quit acting like abused spouses.
Yeah,
you can't wait until the GOP is ready to agree with you before you start investigating and showing.
Well, they're doing the investigations right now, Vince. The question is, should they begin the impeachment hearings, or should they continue the investigations until the investigations show obvious, irrefutable evidence of actual crimes?
Their obvious, irrefutable evidence is already there. Look at emoluments, abuse of authority, witness tampering.
Yep.
Every one of these is a felony.
Yep.
And they're all they're all impeachable offenses.
So, play this out. Let's say that just based on everything that's in the public record right now, and I agree with you, I think that, any other president, frankly, of either party in the past would have been impeached for this stuff. Donald Trump goes on TV and basically brags about the crimes he commits, challenges it trashes the FBI, trashes the prosecutors, trashes federal judges for that matter. So you play that out. He gets impeached in the House of Representatives. It goes to the Senate. He's got sufficient, he has sufficiently intimidated and cowed the Republican senators that it doesn't pass in the Senate. And so he skates just like Bill Clinton does. And then he starts bragging about how he now owns the libs. He destroyed the Democrats. He proved that he's not guilty. Put this thing to bed, blah-de-blah-de-blah. He ends up much, much stronger as a result of that. How's that a good thing?
You're assuming facts, not in evidence.
Okay.
Right?
I'm assuming that he's going to continue to behave the way he has in the past. Look at what he said about the judge in the Manafort case. The judge did not say that there was no collusion. He said that they weren't, this case had nothing to do with Russia collusion. But Trump lied about that, and Fox echoed his lies, and his followers believe him. So we'll see.
You start the hearing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I agree. Then start the hearings. Okay. Oh, you mean start the impeachment hearings? I'm not sure about that, but I think that we need to be having criminal hearings, and we need to be having them now. Luke Vargas is up next. Stick around. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Let's check in with Talk Media News and find out what's going on in the world today. This report brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and Loving What You Do, Ellen Ratner's new book. On the line with us is Luke Vargas, Chief Foreign Correspondent for Talk Media News. He's broadcasting from the UN headquarters in New York. He also does a 2-minute podcast every day. You can search Luke Vargas wherever you get your podcast. Luke, I want to get to Caracas, but I want to start with this 787 MAX 8. As a pilot, I have been following this carefully, and I've been following some of the pilot bulletin boards. And it seems to me like what happened here is, A, that Boeing so completely redesigned the 737 that they really should have called it a new airplane. They put much more powerful engines on. They had to mount them forward, more forward on the wing than the old ones were. The problem is they generate so much more thrust if the plane's not really heavy on takeoff and the pilots, go into full acceleration. It'll lift the nose so much that the plane can stall. So they put in this software thing that overrides the pilot's ability to push the stick, pull the stick back. That software was opt out. It should have been opt in my opinion, as a pilot. And frankly, Boeing should have called this a new airplane. Should have been the 797 or something. But they didn't want to do that because it would have been more expensive. There was all this regulatory stuff involved. The airlines didn't even want to note that there was new software and new, in a different positioning of the engines, which required actual reconfiguration of the cockpit, and because they didn't want the additional training expense. Did anything I just say conflict with anything that you know about this? And if not, your note to me says that this is getting political. How so?
Well, does it conflict with something I've read? No, and I would add, for the purpose of just giving a little more background to your listeners, that one of the reasons why Boeing may have been, and we don't know this is necessarily the case, or why the FAA may have been a little hasty in pushing out approval for this aircraft to hit the skies, was that every month in which this 737 MAX 8 aircraft wasn't in commercial usage, a big American competitor, or a big competitor of Boeing, an American firm, Airbus, was continuing to really just own this space, this sort of
right with the
A320,
A330, the A340.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, I think it's worth pointing out that, there was, you could almost argue, even more than just a sort of corporate interest in wanting this plane to go fast. And in America, American national.
Well, there's also regulatory capture. I mean, if you work for the FAA and you're involved in certifying these aircraft, you may know, and I don't know how deep this is in the FAA. We know this happens in the EPA, for example. You know that if you do what industry wants, when you retire from the government, from your $60,000 a year government job, you got $1 million a year job. Maybe working 12 days a week or a year. With one of the big airlines. Or one of the big, or with Boeing, for example.
Yeah, that's concerning, and I think the fact that there are possible questions being raised about whether the FAA is sort of dragging its feet. And it's worth pointing out, you've basically, as of yesterday, it was China and Indonesia that had canceled flights of this plane. As of just a few hours ago, basically most of the big European nations, the United Kingdom, Germany and France, Australia, South Korea, Malaysia. So now we're talking about the majority of the operators.
Right, it's everybody except United and American and Southwest Airlines, it seems.
Exactly right. I saw Elizabeth Warren came out with a statement today saying, look, well, we don't know what the causes of this. There are questions that these planes were pressed into service without additional pilot training in order to save money. She links this possibly to the administration not standing up to Saudi Arabia because maybe canceling arms shipments would be a big hit to Boeing's arms exports, and that maybe we need to answer those questions over the long run. But in the meantime, she called on the FAA to ground the planes immediately. So it is certainly disheartening to be in a situation in Washington where the FAA, an agency that I think commands, and rightly so, commands a lot of respect from the commercial flying public through history, because they've done a pretty good job of making sure the best planes are in the sky. It's disheartening that we're now in a period where we, because of Trump's Washington, we may be distrustful of sort of the objectivity of agencies like that. I think that's all coming to a head today.
Yeah, and I think that if they had simply made this software patch opt in rather than opt out for the pilots, you wouldn't have these dead people right now. But there may have been other problems. I mean, I really think this should have been rolled out as a new aircraft, but that's just me. Anyhow, Caracas, the U.S. is pulling out our diplomats from the capital of Venezuela. What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, you can see why the situation is deteriorating in that country. We're now in day 5 of a nationwide blackout, essentially, and desperation is mounting. But there was no reference to that as the explanation for why this was happening. Instead, Mike Pompeo sort of abruptly tweeted out last night that the diplomatic presence of the United States in the country, quote, has become a constraint on U.S. policy, end quote, which is precisely the kind of cryptic warning of the sorts that we've gotten from John Bolton and others, right? The 5,000 troops to Colombia.
This is we're about to start bombing you, isn't it?
Well, let's maybe not go quite that far. I mean, it's very possible that this is just a reflection of a deteriorating security situation for other reasons, and that particularly without power and certain communications networks down, it's just too dangerous, and maybe these people will come back. I've spoken to a few defense analysts who are very concerned about the U.S. possible military action in Venezuela, who themselves said, look, we still don't see any other suggestions that something is in the works here. But I will say it is counterintuitive. The U.S. has basically said we're going to keep diplomats there because it backs Guaido. We can help out the opposition. To pull them out is, at the very least, sort of handicapping our ability to do that if there's no military component here.
Amazing stuff. Luke Vargas with Talk Media News. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you.
Yeah, good talking with you. We'll be back. We're going to check in with Kevin Camps with Beyond Nuclear and continue our conversations about impeachment and all things Trump.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
Well, it's Tuesday, only 4 days, Tuesday through Friday, more to go in the Free Speech TV fund drive. So, you know, reaching back in memory to the National Lampoon and their cover with the dog and the gun, you'll recall. Make your donation now or I'm going to shoot the bear, the Bernie bear. Remember when we gave these away years ago? Anyway, I say that only half in jest, because if you want to see a Democrat as president, we have to have a Democratic or a progressive media landscape. In fact, if you want to see a progressive as president, we have to have a progressive media landscape. And that is not CNN and MSNBC. That is Free Speech TV. It's right. It's not even NPR or PBS. None of those organizations are progressive. And most of them, in fact, kind of minimize and poo-poo progressive ideas and progressive plans and things like that. Here on Free Speech TV, you've got serious progressive programming, real progressive programming. And if we don't hit our fund drive goals, we're essentially shooting that, right? We're taking a bite out of it. We're hurting that. In fact, you know, our failure to hit our goal in the last time around, and I think the time before that too, have, I believe, slowed down the ability of free speech to roll out new programs. It concerns me tremendously that, you know, every single one of our fund drives, we seem to be raising less and less. So, I mean, we're way behind on this one. We're like 30% behind. So we need your help, and we need your help now. Please call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution. There are some premiums. There's the Jesus Was a Socialist bumper sticker. There's with the $20 gift, with a $60 gift. There's the Free Speech TV six-sticker design pack. With a $72 gift, you get a copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. You know, heads up, that's not going to be released until June, so, you know, hopefully we can ship them in May, but we'll see. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie. With a $360 gift, you get everything, the Jesus Was a Socialist pin, the sticker pack, the Hidden History of the Second Amendment, the t-shirt, and the hoodie. With a $500 gift, you can attend this webinar that Louise and I are putting together on resolving fear, anxiety, and stress in these troubled times, and how, in fact, in some ways, to even use those things as a positive force in your life. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out with us for the last hour of the show, and then we'll go grab some lunch. So those are the goodies that we're offering, and you know the premiums. But the bottom line is that you hear news on Free Speech TV, you hear stories and you see stories on Free Speech TV. You get a feel for how things are in the world on Free Speech TV, and not just my program, but you know, all the great programming on this network. That you know, for a long, long time, this network was just Amy Goodman, and you know, and then they started carrying my show. We had a little webinar camera sitting in our studio more than a decade ago, and we just streamed the show live, and it caught an audience. People were like, "Hey, that's kind of cool." And then Free Speech TV expanded out from that and put Stephanie on, and then they started adding other programs, and now we've got, you know, a real live TV network really rolling along here. And, you know, we're very proud to have been there essentially at the beginning, or at least at the beginning of this modern reincarnation of moving from a network that was just playing, you know, Amy's show and documentaries to a network that's actually got, you know, live programming much of the day and interactive programming in many cases. We're very pleased and proud to have played a role in that, and to have been kind of proof of concept for that, for the network. And now we need your help to keep it going. It's just that simple. That's what it boils down to. We need your help to keep it going. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. We would like to grow the network, but right now I'm more concerned with just keeping it on the air and keeping this show on this network. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. If you want to participate, if you want to help out, if you feel that you're getting value from Free Speech TV. Somebody on Twitter yesterday said, you know, I'm giving up oil changes to be able to send that $45 to Free Speech TV. You know, I almost responded saying, don't give up your oil changes. I mean, there are limits, right? You don't want to ruin your car. On the other hand, you know, for, 2 decades now, I've always used synthetic oil in my car, so it only needs to change the oil every 20, 30,000 miles, although, you know, you still do it more frequently than that. But, and also the synthetic oils are, you know, apparently less hard on the environment. But in any case, that was sweet, right? That was a really sweet sentiment that, you know, this is what I'm willing to give up. You know, maybe give up going out for dinner one night a month, you know, or give up that Starbucks, you know, one day a week, or what, you know, whatever it may be that to help keep this network on the air. But please now call 877-378-8669. Please. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's you know, there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Okay, in the Nixon impeachment, this really started in the Senate with Sam Ervin. But then when the tapes came out, you know, then that led to the discovery of the tapes. And then when the tapes came out, but that was just a regular investigation, sort of like, you know, what's being done right now by Elijah Cummings in the House. And then when the tapes came out, it was obvious that Nixon was a crook. On February 6th of 74, the House of Representatives approved a resolution giving the Judiciary Committee, which is where impeachment has to begin, the authority to investigate the president for impeachable crimes. And on July 27th, 74, the House Judiciary Committee voted 27-11 to recommend impeachment. And that was the point in time, more or less, at which Barry Goldwater and the actual leader of the Senate and the leader of the House, the three Republicans, went over and sat down with Richard Nixon and said, it's over. Or at least the Republican leaders in the House and Senate said, it's over. This thing is not going anywhere else. So anyhow, just to kind of clean that up. Kevin Camp is on the line with us. We've been talking about impeachment, a whole bunch of things. We will get back to that in just a moment. But there are other things happening around the world, and one of them is the price tag is now coming in on Fukushima. Kevin Camps is the radioactive waste specialist at beyondnuclear.org. You can also tweet him at Beyond Nuclear. And Kevin, welcome back to the program. It's been a while.
Hey, Tom. Good to be here. Thanks.
Great to have you. So give us a status update, first of all, on Fukushima. Is it still pouring radioactive waste into the ocean?
Yeah, it is. They still have uncontrollable groundwater flow that's radioactively contaminated. It's because the engineered ice wall has failed utterly to freeze the ground, and so that's a failure. They are still capturing the cooling water they use daily, hundreds of tons per day, on those 3 melted down reactors to try to keep the melted cores cool so they don't begin to melt again. That's what they capture into these storage tanks. And incredibly, they have now surpassed the 1 million ton mark on highly radioactive wastewater that's in those storage tanks.
What are they going to do with it?
Well, they do filter it. They get out 60 plus radioactive isotopes, but there's over 200. The one they can't get out at that industrial scale is tritium, radioactive hydrogen.
Right.
And shamefully, Tokyo Electric Power Company, the Japanese government, and American consultants hired by TEPCO, like 2 former NRC chairmen and a former DOE official, have recommended that they simply dump it in the ocean. And it's the Fukushima fishermen's cooperatives who have stopped that for all these years now.
Wow. Well, what's the concept? If they were tritium, I would assume it's impossible to filter out because it's radioactive hydrogen. Hydrogen is the smallest or second smallest atom that there is. So, you know, to have a filter that would catch it would be, you know, basically those atoms would be smaller than the water molecules, and so you simply couldn't separate them and take them out. Do I have that right, first of all?
Well, you do. Well, the hydrogen in the water molecules itself, the atom of hydrogen in the water molecules is radioactive, and that's why it's
that's
so
where the
difficult,
tritium is.
Next to impossible to get it out. You could, at a laboratory scale, do it.
Right.
It's very energy intensive.
So what are the consequences of ingesting tritium-contaminated water?
It causes cancer, it causes genetic damage, it causes birth defects. So it's like other radioactive isotopes, but it integrates into the human anatomy at the most intimate levels. I'm talking the DNA molecule and every other cell and tissue in the human body.
Right, pretty much all the functions of our bodies that aren't fat-mediated or water-mediated, which is the vast majority of them. And that if that water is radioactive, boom. Is it what kind of radiation does tritium release, and how long is its half-life? How long from the time that you ingest some tritium until it basically, well, half-life would be only half as much radiation. How long until it just stops being a threat to you?
The half-life is 12.3 years, so you have to multiply by 10 to get the hazardous persistence. That's 123 years. It'd be safer to go out to 20 half-lives, 246 years. It's called a low-energy beta emitter, but the thing is, if it's in such intimate contact with your DNA molecules that when it does its radioactive decay, it's actually not low energy. It's actually a very strong emitter at that microscopic level. That's where it does its damage, initiating cancers, causing genetic damage, causing birth defects.
Right, and clearly this isn't just humans. This would be any life form, right? Plant or animal.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
And the macaques of Fukushima Prefecture, the monkeys, have shown serious health damage. They've been living in this contamination now for 8 years. So bone marrow dysfunction and decreased brain size in scientific studies.
Wow.
And macaques are very similar to humans, biologically speaking, even genetically.
Yeah, we're only, I think, 15 or 20 million years away from them, evolutionarily. If we're 3 million years away from chimpanzees, that split probably wasn't that far back. Wow. So what is Japan going to, I mean, they're continuing to produce this radioactive water. Do they have any kind of a game plan at all? No,
and I harken back to Dr. Arjun Makhijani of Institute for Energy and Environmental Research, who in the first days and weeks and months of this catastrophe 8 years ago pointed out that this highly radioactive wastewater should be taken somewhere else, like in a supertanker, where it can be more easily and safely dealt with. The problem with the 1 million tons of highly radioactive wastewater is it's at the Fukushima site, which is a nuclear disaster site. It's obviously an earthquake zone. It's obviously vulnerable to tsunamis. So it's a very dicey situation they're playing with. It's really the other shoe to drop, among others as well, like the high-level radioactive waste, the irradiated nuclear fuel, still in the storage pools at multiple units at that site. If they lose that cooling water in those pools could catch fire. It could be worse than the initial catastrophe that we're still experiencing right now.
Wow. And how many reactors in the United States are the same design as the one at Fukushima?
Well, 23 are identical and another 8 are similar. But the good news is that Vermont Yankee shutting down in 2014 takes that number down to 22. And then Oyster Creek, New Jersey, another Fukushima Daiichi twin shutting down last September, takes that number down 1 more. So we're slowly retiring these very dangerous General Electric boiling water reactors. And the next one is going to be Pilgrim near Boston, which is due to shut down by mid-2019.
How would you respond to those people in the climate, among the climate scientists, who are very outspoken in saying that one of the solutions to decarbonizing our atmosphere or stopping the ongoing carbon destruction, pollution of our atmosphere is nuclear power.
It's not necessary to go there. Renewables could get the job done, as could efficiency. And if you do go there, for one thing, it ain't going to work because nuclear is so astronomically expensive and takes so very long that the climate crisis will have come and gone, and you still won't have nuclear showing up at the starting gate. But in addition to all that, it's got its own insurmountable risks that are a mile long. You're trading one eco-catastrophe, the climate catastrophe, for another one, radioactive catastrophes like Fukushima, like 3 Mile Island, that's about to mark its 40th year this month, like Chernobyl, and we just don't need to go there.
Is 3 Mile Island still at risk? Did they ever clean that all up?
No, they've largely not even touched 3 Mile Island Unit 2 that had the meltdown. 3 Mile Island Unit 1 is still operating, so we know what it's capable of. And in fact, the real fight right now is not commemorating this terrible disaster 40 years ago. The real fight is preventing the state of Pennsylvania and the Trump administration from bailing out Unit 1 at 3 Mile Island to keep it operating deeper and deeper into uncharted risk territory because it's so many decades old at this point, and they want to bail it out, incredibly.
Wow. So, I mean, the principal subsidy of nuclear power in the United States is the Price-Anderson Act, which says that because there literally is no insurance company in the world that will insure a nuclear reactor because they're so dangerous that the what do you call them, the people who, the actuaries, I guess they're called, they look at the risk and they say, no, there's, for no price will we write an insurance policy for a nuclear power plant. So the U.S. government, you and me and all the other taxpayers, we're the insurers of all the nuclear power plants in the United States. That's, a huge, massive subsidy, even though there's no dollars involved until there's an accident. But what other subsidies are we giving to nuclear power in the United States that might be appropriately directed elsewhere, like to, say, solar or wind?
Oh, the list is very long, but the crisis du jour now, if the Trump administration, Energy Secretary Rick Perry, get their way at the behest of the nuclear power lobbyists, we're talking $17 billion per year in old reactor bailout subsidies. We're talking another $17 billion per year in old coal plant bailout subsidies. That's $34 billion per year. And all it is really to keep the executive salaries at the level that they're at, to keep the shareholder returns at the level that they're at, and maybe to pay for some routine maintenance and operation costs. But the big fixes, they're not even thinking about doing those.
That's mind-boggling. Kevin Camps with BeyondNuclear.org, the website. He's the radioactive waste specialist at Beyond Nuclear. The Twitter handle is Beyond Nuclear. Kevin, thanks a lot for dropping by today.
Thanks, Tom.
Good talking with you. We'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. It's 17 minutes past the hour.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So do you think it's time for the House to call for impeachment hearings like they eventually did with Nixon via the Judiciary Committee, or do we need to continue investigating? Whoa, welcome back. Things flying around the studio. Let's see here. Ray in Seattle listening on KBCS. Hey, Ray, what's on your mind today?
Oh, good morning, Tom.
Hey.
I wanted to respectfully disagree with Nancy Pelosi. I do believe that if Donald Trump does not get convicted, he will. It will embolden him, and he will be more of the braggadocious sort. But I think to the contrary, we're ignoring the fact that by shining a light on and uncovering his misgivings and wrongdoing and actual crimes, that we would embolden and strengthen the resolve of the Democrats and independents, and possibly even get the attention of some on the right who believe in the rule of law.
But there's a couple of steps here. The first step is you do the investigation. I mean, you know, with Watergate, there was a lot of stuff going on in the press also. But basically, you do an investigation which is not under the rubric of impeachment. It's simply, you know, we're doing an investigation. We saw this with Elijah Cummings last week, the week before, you know, in his testimony with Michael Cohen. And there's others that are happening, many of them behind closed doors. But, you know, there's going to be some more open testimony. And then at some point, when some particular threshold has been passed, that's the point at which the House of Representatives holds a vote on whether to authorize the Judiciary Committee to begin investigating whether impeachable offenses, in other words, to begin an impeachment investigation. And that didn't happen until February of 1974 in the case of Richard Nixon. And it took him about 5 or 6 months to get to the point where, you know, it was obvious that he was going to be impeached and convicted. And he stepped down. So, you know, do you think that we're already, is your argument, Ray, that we're already at or beyond the point where Congress should empower the Judiciary Committee to investigate impeachable offenses? Or should the Judiciary Committee and the Intelligence Committee and the Oversight Committee and any other committee that wants to get in on the act, those are the three that I know are investigating Trump right now, should they simply continue with their investigations until the massive evidence becomes so overwhelming? I mean, a lot of what we're finding now is that Trump was a criminal before he became president. But, you know, while he was president, okay, he paid off a porn star to become president. Well, I think that's a pretty big crime, actually. But anyhow, what do you think, Ray? Which are you suggesting?
I agree that I do believe that that's a pretty important crime, and I also believe I believe that there's sufficient evidence that we should get the proceedings started, and I believe. With this administration, there's a lot more that's going to be uncovered, and I think it will open up an awful lot of eyes. And I do believe that we do have sufficient evidence to at least get the proceedings started and get the further investigation going.
So you would now you realize that the minute that the House votes to investigate impeachment, Fox News, the right-wing hate radio, which did not exist in '74. And, you know, we're just kind of getting their oats during the Nixon impeachment. In fact, they kind of drove it. They're going to go nuts. You ready for that?
They are going to go nuts, and that's what they do. And I think the only thing that we can do is continue to shine a light on the fact that what he's doing is wrong. And it is.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ray. Sunlight is the best disinfectant here. That should be our motto. Ray, thanks a lot for the call. Thanks for listening to us on KBCS. It's 21 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's you know, there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And what do we do here with all this? Kathy in Crystal Lake, Illinois. Hey, Kathy, thanks for listening to Chicago's Progressive Talk. What's on your mind?
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Great. What's up?
Good. You know, I have this feeling that we're never, ever going to get this man out of office because right now, I think we all know he's guilty of treason, But the problem is the state of New York, it's going to have so many charges against him that if he steps foot out of the Oval Office, he has no protection whatsoever.
Right. And that's why, you know, you're seeing all these articles about how the Trump re-election campaign. Well, first of all, they've been raising money literally since the day after he was inaugurated, which has never happened before. And they've raised over $100 million. They have been using some of that for the legal fees of his children, and himself. But you know, by and large, they've got this huge war chest, and the effort, the get out the vote effort, is going to be absolutely unprecedented, at least from what I'm reading.
I don't really think there's going to be an election. You know, I mean, you wrote an article about a year or so ago about the three things that the guy that wrote his book said he was going to do. He was going to come up with the enemies list. He was going to attack the free press, which he's done, and he was going to declare martial law.
Right.
I think because of the number of hate crimes that are going up, the hate groups that have exploded, you know, that dog whistle. He may not even do a dog whistle. He, like you said, he may make a call out to his little militia people. The biggest militia that frightens me is Eric Prince, and it's not Blackwater anymore, but it's something else.
Right.
And as an African American, I'm terrified that, you know, I think that, you know, the Tulsa race riots in 21? Something on that order is going to cause him to say, oh, my God, we have this massive civil unrest. I've got to declare martial law.
Well, there's a precedent for it. That's what George W. Bush did after Hurricane Katrina, and he brought in Blackwater, and they were walking around with guns. And there were people who were trying to flee New Orleans who got shot. I'm not sure they were shot by the Blackwater people. I think they were shot by the state police. But, you know, same thing. It was poor black people trying to get out of there and flee into basically a white neighborhood, and they got shot dead.
They got shot by some of these, like, little militia groups. So
thank you.
This is my fear, that he's going to find a way to consolidate his power, and not so much because he likes being president. I think at this point he has gotten himself into a corner that there's no escape from.
Yeah, and you know, like a rat. You know, maybe I shouldn't use that word after the way he used it against Michael Cohen, but you know, a cornered rat is far more dangerous than a non-cornered rat, and Donald Trump is cornered right now. So, real quick, Kathy, we're going to hit a break in just a second. Do you think? Well, actually, I guess I got another minute here. Do you think that if Donald Trump is you know, if they open impeachment hearings, that will speed up the process toward martial law, or that might slow it down?
I think we're going to start seeing Maxine's going after tax records. I think it may speed it up. It may speed it up.
Yeah, when she goes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, he's not the only one. I think Elijah Cummings, they're looking into the Trump organization.
Yep.
There is so much graft. I don't think any of us have any concept of just how dirty everybody in his administration, including Mr. Pence, but
some of it has leaked out. I mean, look at the Panama City condo thing, where we now know for a fact that Ivanka lied to potential investors.
Oh, yeah, they have her on tape with that.
Yeah.
But look at Wilbur Ross and the Bank of Cyprus and you know, Cambridge Analytica. This is like the tentacles of which, you know, you and I are the same age, Tom. Watergate pales. This is nothing. I mean, it makes it look like a picnic.
I agree.
So I'm concerned.
I am too, Kathy. I am very concerned. Kathy, thank you. Thank you for a thoughtful conversation. I appreciate it. It's great talking with you. And thanks for listening to Chicago's Progressive Talk. It's coming up on 28 minutes past the hour. We'll break here at the bottom of the hour, and we'll be back with more of the conversation about, you know, what do we do with this criminal president?
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And I'm generally very reluctant to call a public official who has not been convicted of a crime a criminal, but the evidence is everywhere. Well, it's Tuesday, only 4 days, Tuesday through Friday, more to go in the Free Speech TV Fund Drive. So, you know, reaching back in memory to the National Lampoon and their cover with the dog and the gun, you'll recall. Make your donation now or I'm going to shoot the bear, the Bernie bear. Remember when we gave these away years ago? Anyway, I say that only half in jest, because if you want to see a Democrat as president we have to have a democratic or a progressive media landscape. In fact, if you want to see a progressive as president, we have to have a progressive media landscape. And that is not CNN and MSNBC. That is Free Speech TV. It's not even NPR or PBS. None of those organizations are progressive. And most of them, in fact, kind of minimize and poo-poo progressive ideas and progressive plans and things like that. Here on Free Speech TV, you've got serious progressive programming, real progressive programming. And if we don't hit our fund drive goals, we're essentially shooting that, right? We're taking a bite out of it. We're hurting that. In fact, you know, our failure to hit our goal in the last time around, and I think the time before that too, have, I believe, slowed down the ability of free speech to roll out new programs. It concerns me tremendously that, you know, every single one of our fund drives, we seem to be raising less and less. So, I mean, we're way behind on this one. We're like 30% behind. So we need your help, and we need your help now. Please call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution. There are some premiums. There's the Jesus Was a Socialist bumper sticker. There's with the $20 gift, with a $60 gift. There's the Free Speech TV six-sticker design pack. With a $72 gift, you get a copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. You know, heads up, that's not going to be released until June, so, you know, hopefully we can ship them in May, but we'll see. With a $100 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt. With a $200 gift, you get the Free Speech TV hoodie. With a $360 gift, you get everything, the Jesus Was a Socialist pin, the sticker pack, the Hidden History of the Second Amendment, the t-shirt, and the hoodie. With a $500 gift, you can attend this webinar that Louise and I are putting together on resolving fear, anxiety, and stress in these troubled times, and how, in fact, in some ways, to even use those things as a positive force in your life. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and hang out with us for the last hour of the show, and then we'll go grab some lunch. So those are the goodies that we're offering, and you know the premiums. But the bottom line is that you hear news on Free Speech TV, you hear stories and you see stories on Free Speech TV. You get a feel for how things are in the world on Free Speech TV, and not just my program, but every, you know, all the great programming on this network. That you know, for a long, long time, this network was just Amy Goodman, and you know, and then they started carrying my show. We had a little webinar camera sitting in our studio more than a decade ago, and we just streamed the show live, and it caught an audience. People were like, "Hey, that's kind of cool." And then Free Speech TV expanded out from that and put Stephanie on, and then they started adding other programs, and now we've got, you know, a real live TV network really rolling along here. And, you know, we're very proud to have been there essentially at the beginning, or at least at the beginning of this modern reincarnation of moving from a network that was just playing, you know, Amy's show and documentaries to a network that's actually got, you know, live programming much of the day and interactive programming in many cases. We're very pleased and proud to have played a role in that, and to have been kind of proof of concept for that, for the network. And now we need your help to keep it going. It's just that simple. That's what it boils down to. We need your help to keep it going. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. We would like to grow the network, but right now I'm more concerned with just keeping it on the air and keeping this show on this network. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. If you want to participate, if you want to help out, if you feel that you're getting value from Free Speech TV. Somebody on Twitter yesterday said, you know, I'm giving up oil changes to be able to send that $45 to Free Speech TV. You know, I almost responded saying, don't give up your oil changes. I mean, there are limits, right? You don't want to ruin your car. On the other hand, you know, for, geez, 2 decades now, I've always used synthetic oil in my car, so it only needs to change the oil every 20, 30,000 miles, although, you know, you still do it more frequently than that. But, and also the synthetic oils are, you know, apparently less hard on the environment. But in any case, that was sweet, right? That was a really sweet sentiment that, you know, this is what I'm willing to give up. You know, maybe give up going out for dinner one night a month, you know, or give up that Starbucks, you know, one day a week, or what, you know, whatever it may be that to help keep this network on the air. But please now call 877-378-8669. Please.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Maryland notes it was Alexander Butterfield who gave the testimony. The Fred I was thinking about, I think, was the guy who installed them. But, you know, thank you for that, Maryland. And, you know, spot on. Elena in Seattle. Hey, Elena. Thanks for listening to KBCS. What's up?
Hi. So I want to weigh in on the debate about impeachment. I think it's time to hold the hearings. And I know that the political calculation is never certain, but it's the right thing to do. And I remember the movie The Post that talks about the Pentagon Papers being released through the paper. They also, the head editor and the owner of the paper, they
publisher, yeah,
really struggle with it, and it's also very scary for them. You know, bad repercussions. They may have go to prison, or even the paper may be closed. But they decided to do the right thing, and it paid off.
Yeah, and I think we forget how bad it's gotten. I mean, we had a president 12 years ago or thereabouts who literally lied to us, both a president and a vice president, who lied to us about a threat to this country. They said that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and intended to use them against us. Scott Ritter and others, Hans Blix, the UN inspectors, were inside Iraq. They visited all of his facilities. They said there is no threat. Saddam Hussein repeatedly said, I have no intention of coming after your country. Come, you can look around, no problem. And George Bush and Dick Cheney lied us into a war that has cost the lives of over 1 million people, destroyed a nation, destabilized the region, and cost the United States 6,000 or 8,000 American soldiers' lives, and literally several $1 trillion worth of treasure. And the Democrats in Congress failed to hold Bush and Cheney responsible. I think those were impeachable crimes, among other crimes that were committed, like torture and the invasion of Americans' privacy, spying on American citizens. We didn't hold them responsible. So now we've got a guy who's about to start a war in Venezuela in order, as part of his reelection strategy, in my humble opinion, and who has given away, secrets to foreign governments, multiple governments on multiple occasions, has a woman associated with Chinese intelligence running a ring out of Mar-a-Lago, an influence buying ring. Just serious stuff. The threshold has gotten so high to impeach a Republican. It's like, they almost have to go out on Fifth Avenue and shoot. So, oh yeah, that's right. Michael Cohen said the Republicans would still support him, and I think they would. And Elena, I think that we're about 15 years late in this conversation here, frankly. We should have been having this conversation in 2003 when George W. Bush lied us into the war in Iraq.
Yeah, and I got really disappointed when Obama said, let's move on. Let's move on. You can't move on. It'll just get worse. Yeah, and it did. It absolutely did. And every time we've just moved on, we moved on from Nixon, and Jerry Ford pardoned Nixon and all his buddies. And then George Bush, at the recommendation of William Barr, who was then Attorney General and who is now again, by the way, William Barr, December 25th, 1992, recommended to George Herbert Walker Bush that he pardon Caspar Weinberger and Ollie North and all these guys from Iran-Contra, and thus cover up the treason that was committed by Ronald Reagan in cutting the deal with Iran to hold the hostages so that he could win the election, and the treason that was committed or the crimes that were committed in arming the Contras down in Central America, which are still coming back to haunt us in the form of refugees right now.
That was covered up, and so then that got us George W. Bush, who, along with Dick Cheney, committed all these crimes. That got covered up, or we moved on from it. Let's say Bill Clinton moved on from prosecuting Bush and Reagan. And then Barack Obama moved on from prosecuting Bush Jr. And now, is the next Democratic president going to move on from prosecuting the Trump crime family?
Yeah, don't forget Elliot Abrams.
Yeah, he was. That's right. Elliot Abrams was one of the guys that got pardoned by William Barr, and who then Donald Trump just hired and sent down to Venezuela. And he's the warmonger, the war criminal behind the Contra part of the Iran-Contras. It's insane. Elena, thank you for the call. Lawrence in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, listening on Sirius XM. Hey, Lawrence, what's up?
Hey, Tom. 8 years ago, I told my wife, when I heard a poll, that it was 42 or 43% of all Americans believed the Earth was created in a literal 7 days. I said to her, this does not bode well for the future of American politics, that level of willful ignorance. But because it is such a large number of people who are willfully ignorant that are backing this president, I think Nancy Pelosi's approach is the right one. I think just bringing articles of impeachment would edge us closer to a civil war. He's got 40% of the American population in his pocket. And however ill-informed they may be, they are in his pocket and solidly behind him. And I think the only thing we can do is, with the investigations, try and get as many of those people as possible, change those hearts and minds with making the evidence so clear and so undeniable, although it's pretty obvious already, to where they can't refute it, where Fox News can't even refute it.
But they weren't even bothering by the end of the Nixon, or by the end of the Shrub presidency, Bush Jr. They were, even Fox wasn't bothering to say, what he did was totally legal. They were just saying that torture and the waterboarding and the people who died being tortured and the use of black sites around the world where people were disappeared, that was just necessary, even if it was against the law. Spying on Americans, Snowden revealed all that stuff. All the crimes of the Bush administration. It's like, we'll cut him a check. He's cut him a pass because he's a Republican. It seems like that's happening all over again. And at some point, somebody's got to say, I'm sorry, enough.
My point is that impeachment is going to be counterproductive. The only thing we can do is win the White House in 2020 and try and convince as many people between now and then
But do we then move on? I mean, Jimmy Carter took the White House, and he did not look back and try to prosecute Nixon. Bill Clinton took the White House. He did not look back and try to prosecute Reagan and Bush. Barack Obama took the White House. He did not look back and prosecute Bush. And in every case, there were actual crimes that could have been committed. Is the next Democratic president going to be expected to let Donald Trump ride off into the sunset like all the previous Republican criminal presidents?
I'll tell you what, as a practical matter, I think it's a matter of what the percentage of people that's still behind Trump at that point is.
Yeah.
If he's still got 35 or 40%, it's just going to rip this country apart.
So instead of paying attention to the laws and the Constitution, we should be paying attention to polls.
It's got to be realistic.
Well, I get the practicality here, Lawrence, but I'm so offended, not by you, but just by, this 40-year history, basically, of excusing Republican criminality, when a Democratic president wears a tan suit to the White House, it suddenly becomes a week-long scandal, and it just blows my mind, the hypocrisy of it all. Lawrence, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Karen in Winter Haven, Florida, watch us on Free Speech TV. Hey, Karen, what's on your mind?
Well, to continue on, Tom, I've always maintained that they never should have allowed Trump to even take office without divesting from his corporation or his company or whatever it is because of the emoluments clause. And there was nothing there, or we have nothing in our Constitution to even say, hey, you cannot take office without doing these things. Now, it sounds to me like the emoluments clause is expecting us to impeach anybody who violates it. But as we see, impeachment is very difficult. So we're working from behind, kind of. with not saying, no, you cannot enter the office without doing this, saying, oh, if you do this, we will remove you.
Yeah.
And that's not a good solution for us because at the time, I think Trump's lawyer said something like, oh, well, we say he doesn't have to put his assets into a blind trust or something like that. And nobody was screaming going, yes, he does.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I mean, just his lease on the Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C., the actual hotel, it's the old post office building, is owned by the U.S. Park Service. And they leased it to the Trump Organization, and the lease itself has language that says if any officer of this corporation acquires public office, they have to, that breaks the lease. That's the end of the lease. The property goes back to the Park Service.
Right. And they haven't even, no one has enforced that either. I think they did ask for an opinion, but for some reason it's been kind of scuttled or something.
Well, it's because it's the Trump administration. I mean, the Park Service is now, under the control of political appointees of Donald Trump, so they're not going to do that. I mean, they're not going to enforce their own contract. It's the whole thing is like the more you dig, the deeper you get, the more it smells. I mean, just the more grody the whole thing gets. Karen, thank you for the call. And thanks for watching Free Speech TV. It's 44 minutes and change past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Talk media for the sane among us.
To Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Fair and only slightly unbalanced. I'll be right back with more of your calls in just a moment. And welcome back. Patrick in Los Angeles, listening on the Thom Hartmann app. Hey, Patrick, what's up?
Tom, hey, listen, thanks for the line. Appreciate it. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you. Back at you.
Yeah, this impeachment should have been done yesterday or last year. We have seen this guy admit on TV that he committed obstruction of justice. And, precisely what he talked about is the very definition of obstruction of justice, interfering with an investigation because he didn't think it warranted, looking into. And obviously he had a vested interest in it not being warranted. That's one reason. The second reason is this guy's obviously a Russian. I mean, he's been committed to advancing, Russian special interests, or at least
I think he's trying to advance his own special interests in the Russia deal because it involves so many corrupt oligarchs and it's just inherently a corrupt deal. I mean, this is how Milton Friedman set up the modern Russia. Is going to make him hundreds of millions of dollars. It's going to be his most lucrative deal ever, and that's why he's bending over backwards, because he sees all that money in his future. I don't think he cares about Russia or the United States, frankly. I think his only loyalty is to himself and his money.
Well, at this point, because he has involved himself so much with the Russians, if he separates himself now, then, the evidence will come out. Things will leak out.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, if in his first meeting, his first private meeting with Putin,
go ahead and skip this
said,
video if you don't like
Donald,
gadgets.
I just wanted to let you know that I'll take that apartment at the top of the Trump Tower that you're building, which will, dramatically increase the value of the building. And we will get this thing built. Don't worry about it. And Donald Trump said, oh boy, thank you very much, Vladimir. At that point, then, from that point forward, with every single meeting that he has with Putin, Putin now is in a position essentially to blackmail him if he wants. He doesn't have to say a word. Trump knows it, right? Trump is afraid now that this is going to come out, that he's got this deal. I mean, that just makes so much sense to me. It so explains so much of his behavior, because Trump's not an ideologue. He doesn't. I don't even think he understands international politics. He just knows where, in the Philippines he can pay off the guy and he gets his Trump Tower. In Indonesia he can, he knows how to bribe politicians. He learned it really well from his dad and from the New York mob.
Until now he's never been an ideologue. It's only when his survival has depended upon these guys, and that you know, the
and that's not being an ideologue. That's just being a hypocrite. That's just, you know, saying, "Oh, yes, I'm suddenly opposed to abortion." You know.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, because it's going to advance. It's going to advance.
Yeah. When Marla Maples got pregnant, he had a conversation with Howard Stern on the air about whether or not she should have an abortion.
That's true. Yeah. That is. Well, I mean, just more examples of you know, ridiculous hypocrisy. But you know, by itself, obstruction of justice and, you know, his commitment to Russia. I mean, those two things. And you know the Justice Department, they're not going to prosecute him. You know, the Democrats need to start talking about that. They're not going to prosecute him because he's taken it over.
Because he's what?
He's taken over the Justice Department.
Oh, the Justice Department, yeah. And William Barr is a big piece of that, by the way. His role in pardoning all these Iran-Contra guys is insane. Patrick, thank you. Hey, over at ThomHartman.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's you know, there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartman.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartman.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartman.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartman.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great. George in Chicago, listening on Chicago's Progressive Talk. Hey, George, what's on your mind today?
Well, I love your show, Tom, not only because of what I learned from you and your guests, but the incredible array of intelligent callers. Most of what I wanted to say has already been said. I'll just leave it at this. Lord Acton's maxim applies to money as well as power because they're fungible. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Absolute unlimited money corrupts absolutely. And that's what we're facing with a Trump campaign. As you pointed out, he started campaigning for 2020 the day after he was inaugurated, and he's already built up a huge, monstrous war chest, a lot of it filled with dark money.
Right.
And getting 20 Republican senators to vote to convict him and remove him in the face of his base, and that kind of money is terrifying to them. And I think that Donald Trump is such an egotistical maniac that even if he was convicted and removed by the Senate, that would not stop him for running for office in 2020. If he was removed this year or next year during the primaries or even during the convention, if it happened that way, he's got so much money and so much access to lawyers, he'd be able to file the motions in 50 states to get on the ballot.
But would he win?
He's not a... I'm sorry?
But would he win? I think if he was successfully impeached by the Senate, at that point, Fox News would pull their support.
He would split the Republican Party a million ways to Sunday.
Right.
And that's what the Republican senators are terrified of.
Well, this raises also the question of what happens if Michael Cohen's prediction is correct, that Trump loses in 2020 but refuses to leave the White House.
I think that the longtime public servants would simply ignore him, and if necessary, the Secret Service would remove him.
But what if he refuses to leave the White House and Chris Kobach comes forward and says, yes, Donald Trump lost the election by 5 million votes and by 35 electoral votes, but here, I've got proof that in these states where these electoral votes happened, there was voter fraud. I've got the names. I've got the lists. We can prove that this election was fraudulently stolen by Democrats, by illegal immigrants voting. I mean, you know, he's got enough sycophants in enough states who literally are saying that right now. They're saying that about the last election, even in the lack, absolutely lacking evidence, that's going to be the rubric that he'll use. That'll be the excuse that he'll use to try to.
I have no doubt, Tom. I have no doubt, but I think that the patriots who are in government service will do everything to prevent that. They'll tell him to take it to court. And here's a little known fact: the president's band, the Marines, they're the defense force for the White House. They'll defend the White House against attackers, and they'll make sure Trump leaves.
Wait a minute. The musical? Oh, he hung up. I didn't quite understand that, but anyhow, we'll see where it goes. Robin in Kingston, Washington. Hey, Robin, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I'm just going to chip in here on the impeachment debate, and I think I have a very good analogy. I'm actually look at impeachment in the same way that I do the effectiveness of big marches and whatever. And just to let anybody understand, I am pleased that we have Trump and Pence right exactly where they are, because we should make this an albatross around the Republican Party's necks for the next half century. Yeah. But anyways, the point that I want to say is that I have written a thing called Civil Information, which I've shared with you before, and I criticize the effectiveness of big marches because they go from nowhere to nowhere in front of only the marchers, and then they end up being underreported by the oligarch media, and the big marches happen rarely. Mm-hmm. I kind of look at impeachment as the same way, okay, because I feel that essentially impeachment efforts, major efforts, go nowhere, and they do not change governance. It wasn't the impeachment of Nixon that brought a wave of kind of left or Democrats and women into Congress and whatever it might be. It was Ford's pardoning of him.
Right.
So the question that I ask my left friends to try to consider is, which is better regarding marches? 1 million-person march every now and then, or 1 million one-person marches or small acts of democracy. So it's the same question: which is better?
Well, we saw this with the Iraq War. At the time that Bush and Cheney were lying us into the Iraq War, not only were there the largest mass demonstration of people in the streets in the history of the world happened, in early 2003, just before Bush invaded Iraq, saying, please don't. But also, I was living here in Portland at that time, doing my program here from Portland, and you couldn't drive down the street. I mean, not literally every street corner, but many of the more prominent street corners in this town had rotating groups of people, and it was typically just 2 or 3 people who were standing there with signs, or the women who were standing in all white, or people standing in all black. We had all these individual citizen protesters with these very eloquent protests. I'm guessing that's what you're talking about, Robin.
Yes, Tom. I am talking about that. So to tie it in, I would say, which is better regarding one impeachment process, or would it be better for all of the people who do want impeachment to not pass that responsibility on to impeachment, but take that same energy and get online?
Yeah, I get it. Robin, I'm sorry we're out of time. I think both are possible. I think we can walk and chew gum, but we'll see. Thanks so much for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It actually requires you to participate. Please jump in. Tag you're it. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
We say fight back!